assistant. You do? What do you need to do? Do a presentation. Oh man, this is the one that doesn't work.
Okay, this meeting will now come to order. Adequate meeting was provided by sending such notice to the Asbury Park Press, the Middletown Patch, and the Middletown Township Public School District's website, and the posting of such notice at the August T. Minor administrative offices and each elementary, middle, and secondary school in the district. Roll call.
Mrs. Kamenetty? Mr. DeFranco?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here. Here.
Benoist?
Here. Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for Lena, who passed away on January 18, 2020. Mrs. England was a paraprofessional at Nutswamp and High School North between February 1990 and April 2011 when she retired. Our thoughts are with her, her family, and her Middletown community. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, and now for the presentation and discussion on school consolidation.
Yeah, okay, this time, the board members that are sitting directly behind the screen and myself will move to the side so that we could move forward with the presentation. But just to set the ground on what we're going to do here at this time, so we're going to present for about a half hour, and our goal is really to take the questions, the concerns that were presented to us the other night, and customize a presentation with more detail that builds on the previous slide deck. And then at the conclusion of that, to take an additional half hour of question and comment on top of the two previous public opportunities for question and comment. And then to move forward with the regular meeting for that night. And then if there are other questions at the end after that half hour, they certainly can ask questions at that time at the end of the night. Correct. Mr. Lawson is going to start with his statement. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Requires a moment of patience. For instance, turns the red of second.
Good evening. I'm Tom Lawson, President of the Middletown Township Administrators Association, and in my 10th year as principal at Thorne Middle School. We were all present at the meeting Monday night, and I was so impressed with the passion of those parents representing their schools. Emotions are understandably running high. When S2 passed 2 years ago, we became aware of the ramifications of state aid cuts. As principals, emotions certainly ran high with us because we were very protective of our schools and our communities. But then reality sets in, and we are charged with that juggling act of making very difficult choices while trying to maintain our educational mission for our students. So we as administrators have to deal with reality, and no solution is perfect. As principal of Thorne Middle School, these are my communities. I care deeply about them. If the board approves this recommendation, with the reality of the situation, I choose to strip it all down and focus on the positives. The combining of two of our great communities with that passion I mentioned will be powerful, the potential limitless. The increased opportunities for student interaction in one of our best facilities with lower class sizes will be a social, emotional, and educational benefit for the students in both communities. I'd like to mention that Mr. Eric Paulson, an at-large member of our executive board and the principal at Harmony Elementary School, has written a letter on behalf of the MTAA that has been presented to the Board of Education, and it does have unanimous approval of our membership and in favor of the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, if we could move forward, slides, please. Thank you. We're going to start with policy 7130, school closing. What we, as an administrative team, have been charged with to put forward in front of the board. I won't read it, I'll let you read it, but basically, this policy outlines the circumstances for which we would consider the consolidation proposal that's in front of the board at this time. Policy 7130, school closing. The board will not commit itself to the closing of any school facility without first having collected and considered appropriate information regarding student enrollments, educational adequacy of school facilities, relevant safety and traffic factors, district revenues, alternative district organizational plans. So for us right now, the enrollment history is really important because the enrollment history is part of the funding issue. And when you look at the fact that over the period of time from 2011 to where we are now in the 2020 school year, that we have lost 6.8% or 680 students in our district. That's really important as it relates to our funding. It really is important how it relates to the delivery of instruction, programs, services. New Monmouth is a central theme in this, of course, so I just want to go over some points during this time. We analyzed the data over the last 17 years as it relates to New Monmouth, and it really explains our path. When you look at the fact that 8 out of the past 17 years, there were more than 500 students in New Monmouth Elementary School, that all but the last 3 years were more than 400 students in New Monmouth. And if you look at the fact in 2009-10 school year, New Monmouth had 190 more students than it does now. The reason that those numbers are higher than what ours is, combining of those two schools and bringing 194 students over from Fort Monmouth, is that we're taking out the preschool programs. At that time, the preschool programs were actually included. An important point about that is that that also was prior to the renovations that we did in the summer of 2013, which added significant classroom space, art room, music room, OT/PT sensory, resource rooms, all of those things that you see up there. So I think that's really important. And also that the community asked us for specifics on classrooms. You can see that up there. Classrooms needed in the current projected enrollment, 28. Classrooms available at New Monmouth, reallocation, after the reallocation of preschool, 31. So this is as accurate as we have with the numbers we have right now, exactly what the plan would look like in consolidation. You see Port Monmouth for 2021, you see New Monmouth by itself for 2021, and then you see the combination of Port Monmouth and New Monmouth. And that's really where and then the significant pros and the cons as well. You know, I want to be clear that we're here in a cross-section of the reduction in funding, which began with the implementation of S2 in 2018. 10 months of meetings, 7 strategic planning meetings, 11 hours of public forum, and all the information that came out of that, and the fact that we're just at final draft of a new 5-year facility plan. So you have strategic planning, you have a facilities plan, you have the reductions in funding that we're facing, you have the reductions in enrollment we're facing. As I said before, today I met with students at Port Monmouth. We're not here because we want to be, we're here because we have to be, but we still see the positive potential that is offered here. So, okay, so now we're on to educational adequacy of school funding.
Chris, if you can go back to the last slide, I just want to point out there was the other night, and this is a significant issue up there only because it was raised the other night. There was questions regarding the capacity of the APR in its ability to service students during the lunch periods. Mr. Ferry and I have talked, as well as the entire administrative team, repeatedly over the last few days about lunch there. The APR at New Monmouth Elementary is the largest elementary APR in the district. It can accommodate 346 students with tables and chairs down, so it's already reduced because the actual capacity is much larger without tables and chairs. That will allow Mr. Ferry to do multiple scenarios, and he's thinking through those right now if this were to pass. He can do 2 lunch services very easily, accommodate every student very nicely in the APR. He also, because that APR has a screen, you can also screen off a portion of it and continue to run PE classes basically throughout the entire day, which is the only school that you're able to do that at. They currently do that now, and it's seamless, so he's considering that as well.
If I could too, I heard something I just want to clarify because it involves students. That's what important to me. So Mrs. McCormick was there when I met with students today. And I met with students today because I went to the classrooms where students had written me letters, so let me clarify, and I gave them letters back because in Middletown, with our personalized learning model, student voice, student choice, teaching students that they really can change the world, and they have an active role in the process, and they can be empowered. That was the discussion. At no time was there any discussion. Ms. McCormick, I think Ms. McCormick's here right now. I said it was a proposal, nothing more than a proposal. Is that
Excuse me, Dr. George. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, if I could just please, ladies and gentlemen, if I could just please ask the public to respect the superintendent of schools, to respect the process of the Board of Education meeting. The public will be given an opportunity to speak from the public comment period. We ask that you not disrupt the board meeting so we can get through his presentation. At the appropriate time, you can say whatever you want within your 3-minute allotted time. But we would ask you to not please disrupt the meeting. So allow the Board of Education to conduct its business in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
I just want to be clear, my intention was to empower them, to let them know that it was a proposal, that it's a democratic process, that they participate in the process. That's what happened. Okay, so we'll move on now with the presentation.
So one of the, Mrs. Keys, do you want to say? So another thing that we need to consider while we're considering this proposal is the educational adequacy of the school facilities. We took a look at Port Monmouth and at New Monmouth. We've listed some key points up here regarding Port Monmouth, the fact that it is a 90-plus-year-old facility. There is limited space in the APR to offer lunches and physical education, as we've been talking about. The actual capacity of the APR Port Monmouth with tables and chairs is 132. The floor plan of Port Monmouth makes its ADA accessibility limited. There are very few spaces available from the main or the other entrances of the building that don't require going up or down stairs. And the APR can't be reached without going up and down stairs as well. Compared with New Monmouth is our newest elementary school in the district. We had done recent renovations, as Dr. George spoke about, and have increased the number of classrooms that are in that school. They have the largest elementary APR, as we've been talking about also, and they do have an adequate capacity for lunches with tables and chairs, and multiple physical education classes can be instructed simultaneously. There is ADA accessibility features such as elevator and bathrooms, and we also have an expansive outdoor recess recreational space that is fenced in. So the next slide will show relevant school safety and traffic factors that we took a look at. Again, we took a look at the secure fence playground, the parking lots. There is also some other features of New Monmouth that are, actually it's the only elementary school that has a dedicated left-hand turn lane into the parking lot. There's also a dedicated drop-off lane to help with arrival and dismissal. There's also a crossing guard there at New Monmouth Road. The school is set back from major highways and intersections. We also took a look at the buses and the number of buses that come to New Monmouth now and what it would be under this proposed consolidation. Currently, 13 buses transport students to New Monmouth each morning. There are 12 in the afternoon. There's one less bus in the afternoon. The proposed consolidation plan includes a projected need for 10 buses. And approximately 50 current Port Monmouth students are projected to keep their designation as walkers when registered at New Monmouth School. Currently, 25 New Monmouth School integrated pre-K students are dropped off by their parents and guardians because we don't provide transportation for those students. That traffic would then be eliminated because those classes would be moved to other schools, so we wouldn't have that traffic at the school as well. So overall, we did take a look at all these factors to make sure that we were considering the different factors that would impact the traffic and safety. We also had talked about, as a result of meetings that had been held, and we've been listening to public comment on this, talking about overall 3 buses and 25 to 28 necessary parent vehicles will be eliminated, and we were also talking about possible requests for transfer to Harmony School by PM students not meeting the busing, by Port Monmouth students not meeting the busing requirement will be considered. So it's something that we're talking about and we're investigating to see if that would be feasible. The next area that we have to look at, according to the policy and according to the NJDOE review that will take place on the plan if the board approves it, is also our district revenues. And as we've been presenting in our budget presentation, we are experiencing a reduction in state aid. We have the numbers up there. It's a 7-year implementation. Tomorrow we will find out our state aid numbers for our actual state aid numbers for next year. So we'll see, if the reduction is what was projected based upon the percentages that are put forth in S2. And at this point in time, our next year's budget includes the inclusion of a tax levy, bank tax levy cap, which would raise our tax levy increase over 2%. It would be 2.74% for next year. It's a little over $1 million in bank cap that we are also utilizing in the budget. But even with those funds in the budget, we have about a $2.5 million shortfall at this point.
We were asked during the parent comments, were there any other scenarios that we looked at other than closing Port Monmouth and sending students to Monmouth? So when we started the process, which, there are other things that we looked at, we started looking at the facilities and enrollments. And the idea is we are not ready, we don't have the information or the studies to actually do any redistricting, which really means sending students to schools that are not in their middle school and or high school zones. Like they would end up going to different middle schools and high schools than they're currently zoned for. So we looked at some of the smaller schools and the older schools. We looked at Leonardo, Navigation, and River Plaza. But no other school would be able to accomplish, moving the students and not sending them to schools without redistricting. They would end up in schools that were not following through to their middle school and or high school. So that's when we started to look at multiple scenarios for Port Monmouth, because we really believe that with the capacity on, the Thorn sending and the North sending schools, that it may be possible to do it. So we looked at Port Monmouth being split between Ocean Avenue and New Monmouth. And it wasn't a complete accurate, split along Route 36. There was a little section that was on the north side that was also included in the group that would go to New Monmouth, and then the rest would go to Ocean Avenue. The pro was that there was a big budget, a positive budget impact. But the cons on this one were that we were splitting the students, and that was something, that is something that we didn't want to do. Let's see, where am I? Yeah. Oh, yes, and then one of the other important things is Ocean Avenue would lose their school-wide Title I status, which would impact how they're able to use their Title I funds. All right, another scenario that we looked at was having the students from Port Monmouth go into the Harmony School. And that would require us to, obviously there would be a budget impact that would be positive. But it would also, require us to move 9 of our special ed self-contained classes. Their APR capacity was, is pretty small, and that might be a little difficult for lunches and gym. And if you look at the slides, there would be a negative impact on class size compared to the Port Monmouth class sizes right now. So the next scenario we looked at was the Port Monmouth, to New Monmouth scenario, which it still required us to move the pre-K classes, which we'll talk about that later. But all the students can move together. Class sizes have a positive impact. So that is the scenario that we move forward with and further develop.
So there's other required assurances that we need to look at as well per the policy. A couple of those points are that the proposed closing would be consistent with our district's long-range facilities plan, because the school district has established that there would be sufficient school building capacity to house students for the next 5 years, or that the school district has demonstrated through a feasibility study that the benefits of undertaking new construction outweigh those of rehabilitating the school proposed for closure, but we're not doing new construction in this plan, so that doesn't apply. We will be talking about the the capacities and the enrollments a little bit later in the slides, and we'll show that we have looked at that going forward for the next several years. It also talks about the use of temporary facilities. We are not planning on using any temporary facilities in this proposal, so that doesn't apply as well. And also talks about the reassignment of students to other schools does not produce, sustain, or contribute to anything unlawful. Since we are moving the student population, proposing to move the student population as a whole into and consolidated with New Monmouth, this would not apply as well. So we will talk about the capacity issue in the next few slides. So this slide puts together a post-consolidation scenario of student projections and classroom capacities. So what we did was we took each elementary school in the district and analyzed the floor plans of those schools. And based upon our current district practice of we use 25, we actually do have some class sizes that are higher at this point, but just using 25 because the goal would be to get back to everything under 25. We took a look at each elementary school and projected the general ed enrollment for next year and the special class enrollment programs for next year and our total projected enrollments for each school. So as you can see by the numbers up there, all of the schools have adequate capacity based upon the number of classrooms they have and the class sizes of 25. And again, we are demonstrating that we would be lowering that in this proposal, but we do have adequate capacity in all of the schools and actually have excess overall at the elementary level.
And Ms. Gallagher, I also just wanted, this is not an exact science, so it's very difficult to portray every scenario here. As a building principal, and I was one for 14 years of an elementary school, every year it's a unique scenario and situation of how the classroom is being utilized. For example, we gave it the capacity as if every class was being staffed at 25. In every one of our schools, there are different situations that we have to accommodate. So for example, in schools where preschool classes are housed, those classes don't rise to 25. There are legal limitations on the size of that class, just like for some of our special class programs, our LOD, our MD. So we use 25 just as a baseline so that we could give the community and the board an understanding. But it's not an exact science, and it really does also depend. There are variables, but that would be a maximum capacity that we would be able to accommodate. We did utilize also a premise or theory that in some schools, especially some of our older aging facilities, I'll speak about River Plaza, because I was a principal there, so I have intimate knowledge of that building. There are no small group instruction spaces, like there are, say, at a school like New Monmouth or Nut Swamp, where you can assign resource or intervention classes, small group instruction to occur. So at times you have to take a classroom offline and you can't run it and function it as a general education classroom because you need a space for those small group instruction sessions to occur. We also don't have any consistency right now in the district regarding dedicated special area classrooms in all of our elementary schools, depending on whether or not there's room. Quite honestly, some schools where there's excess capacity, they're able to utilize separate classrooms for art, music, kind of like what New Monmouth is able to do and will continue to be able to do. Other schools, that they don't have that opportunity. So that's something that moving forward, as we enter into the action planning phase of strategic planning over the next couple months, we're going to have to decide as a community. Where do our priorities and what our needs are with regard to that when we look at how our student enrollment is distributed across the district and how we want to utilize the capacity of the space we have in all of our buildings.
So we've also had a lot of discussion about the updating of our long-range facilities plan and the projects that are included in that draft plan that we've submitted for approval by the Department of Education. So we wanted to clarify some of that information. We have recently submitted an update to our long-range facilities plan. Actually, the last plan that was approved was back in 2009, so it's been quite some time, and the DOE wasn't taking new updates into their into their portal, into their system for a while, but then last August, I believe, they did issue a memo to all the districts saying that nothing else would be approved as far as projects until a full update had been done by each district. So now every district is in the process of doing that. What also coincided with that was the fact that, I don't know how much you've heard about the funds that are being made available to schools under the Securing Our Children's Future funds. Now that is a grant opportunity for the district, and our allocation is about $565,000 that we will be able to apply for when they open the portal. But in order to do that, again, you had to have gone through this process recently of updating your long-range facilities plan. So we have been working on doing that since the fall, and we have put together a budget of projects for each building that are really focused on maintenance and security. There really isn't projects in this plan right now that call for wide-scale educational updates and improvements. It's really focused on maintenance and security. So across the projects for all 17 buildings, the total is $154 million. And the budgeted amount for Port Monmouth, and as we've talked about, those were projects related to security and maintenance and systems and so forth, and the maintenance of the outside building was approximately $3.9 million. What this represents, though, are things that we needed to include in the plan in order to move forward with any of these. And if there's other projects that we identify that are not included in this plan, the process is that you submit an amendment and you can have the Department of Ed review it and then include it in your long-range facilities plan. But the point that we've been trying to make it and have everyone understand is, although each building does have a list of things that need to be done, we all know, being that we have even an operating deficit, just operations and not these larger projects right now, for our budget for next year of about $2.5 million, without having a large-scale funding source to tackle these projects, we've only been able to do things little by little through other mechanisms. So when you have limited resources and you have only certain ways that you can raise money to do these improvements, that they unfortunately have to become focused, and not everything gets done that's in the plan, but you have to have it in the plan in order to do it. So we did submit that so that we would be on time to apply for these security funds, which we're still waiting on the exact timeline on. We were told, roughly or temporarily what it would be, but nothing definite yet. But we are in the process of doing that. So we just wanted to bring some understanding to that this was originally, we were expediting that in order to meet the requirement for these funds. It does coincide with our planning for next year as well. But it is, the things that are in this plan are really, maintenance and security based, and they're not things that we would like to see and that we've been talking about that we'd like to see for our schools. The next slide talks about school capacities, and we've just talked about how we've analyzed the floor plans of the buildings and gone through the classrooms and projected what maximum capacities would be based upon 25 students. The long-range facility plan also includes information about capacity. And the way the DOE calculates it, it's all formulas that you put in. It's based, there is a column based on current district practice and building usage. And they base it on how buildings are currently being used. And they do take into account, for example, if it's a pre-K classroom, it will only have capacity of 15 and not 25 and so forth. And even, with the way they're calculating it, which would produce a lower capacity than what the buildings actually have by looking at floor plans, there's still excess capacity across the elementary level of almost 500 students. We did have we've been talking about enrollment projections. There is a cohort survival projection that's included in the long-range facilities plan, where they, in order to submit that, they'll calculate out for the next 5 years based upon their parameters, what we're going to be, what the enrollments would be expected to be over the next 5 years. But we also want to point out that we are still not at the end of our last enrollment projection that goes through the year 2022. And we will be looking at getting a new enrollment projection this spring as we finish up our strategic plan to take us further out for further facilities planning. But we still are under the years that our enrollment projection covers. And the projections have been accurate within 2% or better each year of those projections. So the numbers have been right there. So, but we also want to point out that for the 1920 year, the district enrollment of 9580 is higher than what the projected enrollment was of 9326. However, in Port Monmouth's case, the projected enrollment was 212 students, and we're actually down to 194. That's 9% lower than what the enrollment projection had put forth, for this year, and for the couple of years that are still left on the projection. Dr. George?
Okay, yeah, so the citizen participation. It just takes a second. The citizen participation, so we really try to give, first of all, as everyone knows, we extended the vote to the 11th. I think an extra week.
All right, let them speak.
And on top of that, we've taken multiple opportunities to meet the school community, both at New Monmouth and Port Monmouth, on the playground, in front of the building, in the back of the building, to reach out to the staff and to provide multiple forums so that we can come to an understanding at least whether we agree or disagree as to why we didn't do it.
We heard your concern, and we share that same concern about the social emotional needs of all our students in the district. So, if this proposal does go through, a staffing plan that we develop will include familiar faces. It will include, us supporting their academic, social emotional needs, as well as, maintaining the student peers and the adult relationships that are so important to a transition. Mr. Ferry and Mrs. McCormick, they also have been getting together and coming up with some plans to help with the transition. They've just started some of their ideas. Can you put this next one? This is just some of the ideas that they have. This is just a starting point, but they're having great. I don't know these ones. Grade level, peer trips over to New Monmouth to meet their new classmates, doing pen pals or type of thing to keep the relationships going and building before they get there in September, so that when they go, they already have familiar faces and they know some children from the New Monmouth community. Visitation nights for parents, working with the executive boards of both PTAs to combine them in a meaningful way for both of them. Other, joint events, and, just also working with SBSSs and Mrs. McCormick and Mr. Ferry, trying to configure the classes so that there's a diverse group, but, enough of each school students to make everyone feel comfortable. They invite anybody with any suggestions to give them a call or send them an email, because they're very open to any ideas. Oh, there we go. Okay, so some staffing considerations that we have been discussing as we've been developing the proposal. There was a question the other night regarding whether or not the 24 sections that are projected to be at New Monmouth next year is a guarantee. Based on the current projections, it is guaranteed. I mean, those are the numbers, and they require 24 sections. We are looking at the fact that kindergarten enrollment is approaching class size maximum. It is a Title I school. We're going to talk about it in a few minutes. we would have an opportunity to use Title II class size reduction funds to put another class in there, even if it doesn't reach the 25 maximum in the classes. That is important, and that's why we want to maintain our ESSA Title I funding. It is important grant monies that equals almost $1 million that the district benefits from, and we want to utilize it to best meet the needs of students. So that is something that we can consider doing, and we would not have to wait until the class sizes actually cap out at 25 in order to use that to our advantage. If it doesn't happen at New Monmouth, we do have the ability to do it at any Title I school. However, that is the grade level, and that is the school where we are first zeroing in as we continue to watch the enrollments develop over the next couple months. The other thing is the pre-K integrated and disability classes. There's been questions. We walked the buildings the last couple of days. We had walked them earlier. We had spoken to the principals to determine what would be the best relocation of those classes. That is important to us as well in this proposal. I don't want that to get lost. They are a meaningful group as well. And we really look at this as an opportunity. It's something that we haven't really been satisfied with, quite honestly. Dr. Tiedemann and we have been discussing the fact that we need to have a more inclusive pre-K program here in Middletown, in the sense that right now all of our classes that we run are kind of concentrated in one area. The plan would be to relocate preschool disability and preschool integrated classes at Fairview. We would do a little bit of changing at Harmony, because right now it's inequitable, quite honestly. It doesn't allow for a lot of inclusion in that they're overstaffed or overscheduled for preschool disability students. So we would like to take opportunity, quite honestly, right now to further our ability to promote inclusion for our preschool disability students by adding additional pre-K integrated classes at Harmony. We've also toured Middletown Village, and there is a really nice space over there with bathrooms to accommodate preschool disabilities and integrated classes. And we already have a preschool disability integrated class at Ocean Avenue. Actually, that was one of our Teachers of the Year this year that was honored. And we've been prior to this, we were talking about expanding the classes over there to allow for, again, further inclusion of our preschool students. And Mrs. Wilson, we've talked to her, and she's very excited about growing that program at Ocean Avenue. And so we would have 3 preschool disability / preschool integrated programs at Ocean Avenue, 2 pre-K classes at Fairview. Harmony would maintain their 6 pre-K classes, but we would do a little bit of an adjustment there to decrease their preschool disability population and increase the integrated program to allow for more inclusion. And there would be 2 preschool classes at Village. Okay, so there's a lot of question about Title I and ESSA funding. And it is important funding for the district. It is money that we receive from the federal government to support our economically disadvantaged students, which do represent about 35% of the students here in Middletown. That's an important group that we need to support and ensure that their needs are met academically and social-emotionally. As we discussed the other night, we currently do have 8 Title I schools designated in Middletown, 6 elementary, 2 middle schools. New Monmouth, in early projections, look like they might lose that designation for next year, but they would be grandfathered. And we have submitted our application for school-wide status for Ocean Avenue. It doesn't change the funding, whether or not New Monmouth is designated as Title I, because the funding is based on the total number of students in the district that are economically disadvantaged. The benefit by putting those students or having those students be in a more concentrated grouping, which a lot of districts, they have less schools and students are more concentrated, is that you can really use those monies help offset, quite honestly, district funds and better utilize them. So it's about better utilization of the funding we receive. So I'm going to let Ms. Mrs. Alpone, speak a little bit about Title I funding and how it works and the different ways in which we are legally allowed to utilize these funds. It is very strict. The regulations we get audited. It is very strict. You cannot use those funds for unintended purposes. So I'll let you talk about the regulations.
So we, as Mrs. Pica said, receive two types of funding that can be applied towards salaries, Type 1 and Title II. Title I funds, as Mrs. Pica did mention, is reserved for the economically disadvantaged population within our district. And as she also said, it is a per pupil allocation, so the money always follows the child. So students that were considered economically disadvantaged, Port Monmouth will continue to retain that status and the monies to them when they or if they travel to another school anywhere in the district. Title II funding is funding provided really for the preparation of teachers, the training and development of staff members, but there is a portion that can be utilized for class size reduction that has to be used at the K level, and it's to support growing class sizes. Our allocations for the 2021 school year, we always project out based on 85%. We typically get more, but those projections look to be about a little high of our Title I projection is a little shy of half of. And our Title II projection is about 135,000. So there are other titles in the grant. None of them are funded enough to support a salary. We do have a Title III grant, which is for our ESL students, a Title III immigrants fund as well, and also Title IV, which is for extraordinary educational opportunities. But like I said at the onset, Title I and II are really the two that we utilize to support staff salaries. So there's two pieces of spending requirement language that I think is important to understand to kind of gain a big picture of how these funds get applied. There is language which is referred to as supplement and supplant, and if you look at those words purely for their definitions, supplement means in addition to, supplant means to replace. So the simplest way to put that is you cannot take any money out of the district operating budget and replace it with title funding. Every Title I dollar spent has to be over and above what the district would fund in their operating budget. This does restrict Title I spending because it cannot be used to replace things that are necessary within the budget. Traditionally, we've used this funding in Title I particularly to offset some of the increased time in our Title I schools that we have reading developed teachers and mathematics specialists instructing our students. The other piece of language with which Mrs. Pekas had talked about a little bit when she talked about Ocean Avenue's application for waiver for school-wide is this idea of targeted versus school-wide assistance. Currently, all eight of our schools, our 6 elementary and our 2 middle schools, are targeted, meaning that their economically disadvantaged percentage falls below the 40% threshold. Typically, the poverty cut line is around 11%, so schools within the 11 to 39.9% range are considered targeted. This means that all monies have to be applied only to support identified Title I students. This really ties our hands in how we can utilize the money. That's why it's so advantageous for a school to be eligible for school-wide status, because it takes away the requirement of having to only spend for those students that are identified as economically disadvantaged. The requirements for application is that you've shown over the course of the previous years before the application that you are sustaining an economically disadvantaged percentage in the 30s, and that you also have coincidentally developed a school-wide plan that has benefited your Title I students. Ocean Avenue has done that. They've applied funds in such a way through the support of the salaries of their reading development teacher and math specialists and increasing that time that they're in their buildings, and they have been able to demonstrate progress. So we're able to apply for the waiver as long as their percentage stays above, in the 30s. This is really, like I said, a much more favorable designation.
And why that's a benefit to the district as a whole, to all of the community stakeholders, is that then we can utilize that money, again, not just to augment what we're already funding through our own budget, but to actually fund things that the district is not supporting monies with our own revenue. For example, increasing classes at Ocean Avenue, those teachers' salaries can be charged to the grant. They can be funded through grant monies, not the district revenue. Thus, we're creating more revenue in our operating budget to support the increase in developing of more classrooms in other schools, and not just in Title I schools in that case, because those are district revenue funds in every elementary school. So when we look at possibilities moving forward, if the consolidation were to pass and move forward, we were to move forward with it, there is opportunity to restructure how we're currently utilizing those funds. Like I just mentioned, Mrs. Wilson's efforts over at Ocean Avenue and tremendous efforts in our ability to really, we believe, earn school-wide status there is going to free up a lot of district revenue to support other schools in trying to lower class sizes and increase programs and services for students in the other elementary schools. The other thing that we talked about earlier was the ability to use Title II funds to do class size reduction, and that does not require that we wait until a class size reaches full maximum in a Title I school when we see that it's at a point where we don't think it's academically or socially, emotionally beneficial, and it's in a school where perhaps there's concern regarding academic performance, and we want to provide more assistance in lowering student-to-teacher ratios. We can use the class size reduction option as well. And again, we are right now focusing on kindergarten at New Monmouth and the possibility of adding a 5th section there to lower that teacher-to-student ratio. Consolidation of the schools also eases the burden on how we're currently using title funds, in that we have less positions that are currently funded through the grants to be funded. So it frees up some of that funding to be dispersed to other schools for other purposes. And again, as Ms. Shaw said, because all of our schools are currently targeted assistance, any grant funding we use, let's use $50 as an example, the district has to support that program or that position or that salary with equal to or more that $50. So when we can take positions offline, not only do we save and we can repurpose grant funding, using that scenario right there, that $50 or more that the district was supporting that position with now becomes back into revenue to be used for other purposes across the district. So it almost creates equalization and a relief on the budget in that capacity as well. And that's how we're currently looking. I know there were questions about how does this plan benefit other schools in the district because of that relief on the district budget. And allows us to restructure or redesignate current funding that's going to supporting those positions in other areas. The other thing we're looking at is lowering teacher-to-student ratios during core content instruction in our Title I schools through an inclusion or co-teaching model. This is actually a structure that is in alignment with the federal grant recommendation guidelines for staffing. And we're actively talking about that with many of our Title I principals. Especially in our Title I schools, where even if we wanted to put a class size reduction teacher or add an extra teacher and add an extra classroom, we can't because they just do not have the room capacity and can't add another teacher. This is an option where we can lower teacher-to-student ratios by putting in place a co-teaching model. And that benefits the economically disadvantaged students. It's similar to how it benefits special education students. But it's actually a benefit to all the students in the room. Because when you lower teacher-to-student ratios, it's a win-win for everyone. The other thing we are actively looking at with the principals in discussion is reconfiguration of the support services that we're currently providing district-wide. Those are our support staff positions, like some of the ones we've talked about, that are funded through the grant as well as district funds. through restructuring and redesignation, but maintaining the services in our Title I schools, because those are of significant importance to us based on current academic growth models that the state has given us. We're looking to free up some position or some revenue that's being dedicated to salaries to increase the number of classes that we're currently staffing at the elementary level. If the consolidation plan were to go through, we are, I want to say 99.9% certain, because you never know. We're really early out with enrollments right now. We have a lot more months to go. But based on current enrollments and trends that we're looking at, we'd be able to ease back on those current class size maximums in grades 4 and 5 district-wide and ease them back to where we were, at least for the first step for next year, to 25. That immediately provides relief to Ocean Avenue School, Bayview Elementary, which is a Title I school also, but it would provide relief to them, as well as Lincroft and Nutswamp, where we're projecting that they would currently have at least one class or more in 4th or 5th grade of excess of 25 students, of 26 or 27. And again, that's because of that ability to take district revenue offline through the requirement to match ESSA funds in a Title I school. So it does benefit the district in all of our schools.
Okay, so in summation, as we've previously stated, we really are at crossroads. It wouldn't be right to call this just an impetus of budget or strategic planning. It's an all-around best use of our school funding, of our budget, to make sure we can maximize the delivery of services and programs, positively impact instruction, lower class sizes, and just provide our students every opportunity to be successful. So that's our intention. So at this time, we're going to turn it over again to a half hour of comments from the public. We ask that you stay to that the policy of the 3 minutes, so everyone has the opportunity to speak. I know you do, right? You just want to give everybody.
There should also be a sign-in sheet on the podium.
As the board makes their way back up the stage for this section of the public comment period, it's limited to 3 minutes per person for a total of 30 minutes for this section. There will be another public comment period later in the meeting where if people want to comment about this issue, they can, but this section will be 3 minutes per person, a total of 30 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Jessica Berdiglione. I'm a mother of children at Enrollment. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. First, I'd like to address the board members. Part of your job is to question and research the proposed decision. This is why we voted you in to represent all of us, to make sure all our students are receiving the best education and policies are being followed that are put in place. The condition under policy 7130, the next 5-year projections, is not done. The demographer study is not done. Dr. George, you expressed multiple times how you value the input from the 10,000 survey responses from the strategic planning. How you're not valuing the lowest response to close the schools. Class size. We all want smaller classes for our students, but you have expressed that this is not a guarantee after next year. Research proves that lower class sizes help all students, not just Title I schools. As an educator, I can see the difference in the performance of my classes of 15 versus 24 because of the individualized attention. Next year, your state aid cuts 880,000. The year after is projected to be 1 million. If you allow the district to close one school, what's going to happen the following year? When there is no bank cap, no reserve to help your funding, and the teachers' contracts are expiring. This proposal is just a Band-Aid on the open wound that isn't going to heal but get worse. Class sizes will be large throughout the district. You will have teacher layoffs since you have so-called exhausted every option. So now I guess you achieve the equity that you were speaking of at the strategic planning meeting. All the schools are going to be at capacity and be overcrowded. You're going to hurt our small school community, lower our property value, and I bought in New Monmouth for a reason. I bought there because I could see the growth in the area, the social economics of the area improving, which correlate to higher test scores and higher student achievement. I want the best for my children as a parent, as every parent does. You're not setting them up for success. Instead, you're looking at them as a number and a processing line in your factory. Also, I find it interesting how you're trying to appeal to the South Schools of the Board of Education and representatives of the class size consolidation. After next year, this is not a guarantee. You just need to redraw the lines. I do not envy the position you're in. I am now part of an administrative team in a neighboring district, and I had to sit at that table and eliminate positions. It is hard. I understand the S2 bill has hundreds hindered our district, hindered us significantly. But there are 20, I'm so sorry. But as a district, as a whole, no north side, no south side, we need to face this burden together, even your central office. Also, are we really cutting the fat from the budget? When you're telling me there are $25,000 on for band uniforms, $80,000 for one school media center upgrade while Fort Monmouth had to go and fund their own, and $50,000 in blind replacements, and which is important than putting money towards keeping a school open. Many districts are going to pay to play, and I am not sure we are with that option. Our primary goal as education institution has student learn academics, and that should be the priority. At least 25% of the pre-K students in New Monmouth are zoned for that school. Those students walk into kindergarten socially, emotionally strong, and are set up for success. Taking the program out of that school will hinder.
Your time is up. I'm sorry, we heard it. We want to send people, so just thank you.
People say what they have to say. Not to go 25.
This response to your question, the answer is we make motions to modify the device is in accordance with the bylaws of this Board of Education in order to run an order. And the rules and the procedure prior to the meeting, it was stated by myself. The intent of myself on behalf of the Board of Education, open up here is not to deprive the public of the opportunity to speak and participate in this meeting because it's being done in accordance with the law. And it's not being done to disrespect anyone who was here. It's just done to have an orderly and timely meeting. So thank you so much. 3 minutes. Thank you. Question, I answer the question. Motion.
So you guys aren't going to go 20 minutes.
At least 25% of the pre-K students.
Right, ma'am, sorry. So, if I may, Madam President, there was a motion. I will. I'm sorry, I didn't want to yell into the microphone, I didn't realize that. Mr. Meehan, your motion wasn't really specific. Your motion was to allow the people to say what they have to say. So I would ask, rather than clarity in terms of what specifically your motion is for.
I would say, and then it's fair. I'm sure most of the market. We owe them the money.
Okay, so. Modify or amend the bylaws, in this instance, for a 5-minute period. And I trust that it was seconded in the past when members of the public hear the buzzer go off at 5 minutes, they're going to stop. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, the motion has been properly moved and seconded to essentially allow members of the public to speak for 5 minutes. Essence get 2 more minutes if it passes, ma'am. Is there any questions or discussion from board members? None? All in favor? Any opposed? You got 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. At least 25% of the pre-K students who attend New Monmouth program programs are zoned for that school. Those students walk into kindergarten socially, emotionally strong, and is set up for success. Taking the program out of that school hinders those students from giving them the comfort of knowing their environment. Also, it helps the other students with their adjustments when they see other students comfortable. There are a number of research studies showing that the students who are in pre-K programs, exposing them to social emotional wellness and early literacy skills show greater growth in student achievement than those who do not attend. I wonder if the possibility of extending your pre-K program to even offering a full day option in the open spaces at both schools was even put on the table. This way you can increase revenue to the district. Lastly, at the New Monmouth community, many parents took a survey to express their feelings and concerns, which they have been brought up in the last few meetings. But I would like you to make aware is that 98% of the families have no confidence in the leadership right now. And the board members, if you let this pass. So board members, you have bigger problems on this than this proposal right now. You have mine and the trust of the other families folks gone. Thank you.
Something that you said, I think you said that Dr. George is pandering to members of the board whose children sent to South. We have many board members whose children sent to North, so I just wanted to make that clear.
I'm Michelle Pitzer.
Right, but she said that he's placating those of us whose children are zoned for South.
Okay, hi. Thank you. I'm Michelle Pitzer. I have a student in 4th grade at Fort Monmouth. I have a 9th grader here at North. Two pieces. I've already spoken at the other two meetings. I think basically I would just want to ask you to vote no. But I also want to know, has there been any meaningful attempts by anyone to obtain any of the emergency $50 million in education funding that Governor Murphy has recently released? Everything else aside, though, I must voice my strong objection to Dr. George campaigning at Fort Monmouth School today directly with our elementary students. This is inappropriate, and it is an abuse of his position. He has exceeded his mandate and gone beyond the role of administrator in a most upsetting and disturbing way by lurking around Fort Monmouth School and vexing and intimidating the students, most of which came home upset and crying today because of his presence. It is inappropriate for him to go there and directly interact with the students in an effort to, I don't know, alleviate his own guilt perhaps, by forcing students to listen to his spiel, his propaganda. He is not a school psychologist and he should not be doing this. This must stop today. If you have something to say, speak to the parents. Do not speak to my child. You do not have my permission.
Erin Winters, I'm a 4th grader at Fort Monmouth and a 7th grader at Thorne, who's gone all through Fort Monmouth School. I will claim myself. Dr. George. I appreciate, can you give me your eye contact for a second? I need you to stop mentioning the value of this democratic process to our students. I would much rather them learn about this process within the classroom, Fort Monmouth Elementary School, rather than stand outside on the side of the road protesting in the cold and the rain, holding signs. They should be learning about this inside the walls of that building that you want to close. My husband and I often joke about who gets to be the mean parent, the parent who has to say what nobody wants to hear. I'm going to be that mean parent tonight because none of you want to be. Going back to your charts the other night on Monday about the tax levy, you had the opportunity to reach out to the public, the voting public, and say, we are in trouble, we need your help. We need more funds to educate the children of this township, the future of our township. You sat on a potential levy for 3 years and allowed almost $4 million to expire. If you had issued that tax levy to the public and allowed them to make this decision, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Back in 2010, there was a severe decrease in state aid district funding. Approximately $21 million suddenly dropped to $14 million in 2 years. You had more students back then and you were able to make it work. Now we're projected to go from approximately 18 million to just over 12 million. You found out about those state aid cuts back in July of 2018, and your projections take you to 2026. That's 8 years. Approximately 600 kids less now within this school district between 2010 and now. How are you not more prepared for this? Plus, you also know what the teacher salary pay scales look like through next year. That's 80% of your budget. How are you not planning for this if you have these figures at your disposal? Lastly, redistricting, the dirty word that nobody wants to say, that needs to happen. I am so sick and tired of listening to other parents within this school district complain to me about how overcrowded their schools are, and yet you keep talking to me about capacity and space within the school. Walk through those schools and go see that there are 27 students sitting in a 4th grade classroom over at Nuts Farm. Go walk through those schools and tell me that it's realistic to educate 25 kindergartners. I am sick of these lies. I will be the one to tell you the things that you don't want to hear because you don't want to man up and do your job. I've spoken to, quote, you're not going to win. These are the people who voted you in. They have no faith that you are listening to us. Prove them wrong. You have promised us that you are going to do your job. Prove them wrong. 3 minutes and 3 seconds to talk about my daughter's future.
My name is Jessica Sigler. I am a 3rd grader in Port Monmouth and 2 7th graders in Thorne. I promised myself I would not get upset. I am frustrated. The first line of the Code of Ethics of the school board member states, I will uphold and enforce all laws, state board rule and regulations, and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes should be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. The district policy for school closure is not being followed. As much as we try to spin it that it is not. Semantics were used in the initial announcement to mislead the community in regards to the current state of the building, the state of our learning environment, and the driver for the closure. It was presented to the public in a manner which led them to believe that the school was in despair, that 3.7, then 3.8, and now tonight 3.9, and changes were immediately needed, and that we were the only ADA issue compliance building, which we are not. We were failed to present the basic facts reporting to the public at the time of the announcement, and banked on the fact that our community would not be smart enough to see through your antics and question your motives. You allowed another corporation to donate $6,000 to our school, fully knowing that you were planning to close it. How ethical is that? You allowed our PTA to fund and install playground equipment, fully knowing you were planning on closing our school. How ethical is that? In 2018, we were recognized as a Silver Certified Future Ready School, to which the BOE was very proud to share on their district website and on YouTube. Yet here we are less than 2 years later, and now supposedly our school is not up to 21st century learning requirements. It's a head scratcher to me. You are uprooting the lower income community to build your larger Title I school, and I am appalled at your reference, and I quote, to trimming the fat. Your FRP is in the drafting stages, yet you quote figures for Port Monmouth but lack specifics on the rest of the district. So we have no idea what is in the works for the remaining $150 million. District policy states that the closing must be in accordance to an approved LRFP. It is not. The LRFP is in the draft phase, per your presentation the other day. And I have one last question. Can you guarantee that these students will not be uprooted again when the district thing happens? I'm asking. So if you move us all to New Monmouth, can you guarantee that we will not be redistricted again? No. Because I live on the right side of Port Monmouth. So there's a good chance I'm closer to Harmony and I'm closer to Ocean. So there's a good chance that when you do get the guts to redistrict, that my kid get uprooted again. So this plan completely ignores what is in the best interest for the children, and you're willing to uproot them not once, but potentially twice in the name of money. And there is nothing more unethical than that. You are not upholding your duties as a board member if you vote yes to close this school. I
you know, I have 2 kids at Fort Monmouth School. I too told myself not to get emotional and upset about this. But going to our school today was unacceptable, and talking to our children, the message of a closure and whether or not Qualico is going to go with them is saying to them, it's a done deal. It's already happening. Don't. Everything from the original announcement has been handled without the Port Monmouth community families in mind. Announcing on Facebook, going to the APP, where you tell them the board will vote to move this forward, not a proposal. None of this feels like a proposal. The MTPS wrote a letter supporting, does not feel like there are any options. Your plan today addressed some of my concerns the last time I was up here and gave us how you showed different plans that you were going to do instead of closing our school. The majority of them involved closing our school. There was maybe 1 or 2 plans that didn't involve closing our school. It's shameful. I'm going to read a little bit of your district policy right now. The board will invite citizen participation in the analysis of the information and the formulation of the recommendations. Where was that before this presentation was put together today? Was anyone in this community asked to participate in the analysis of the information and the formulation of the recommendations? I don't know anyone who was. And again, you are against your own board policy. When I reviewed the budget, looking for $1.5 million to save my little school, I came up with a few areas that maybe we should look into cutting before we close the community school. $448,000 in interactive flat panels. I'm sorry, Reagan, a panel is more important to you. $563,000 in Chromebook refreshing. An increase in our curriculum textbooks of over $1 million. Probably some of that's digital. I'm sorry, Port Monmouth students. Technology and these textbooks are more important than your school. Those are budget cuts that you could fit in to make your $1.5 million that we cost you year after year. And getting to those numbers, this is a long-term facility plan. If we stick to your new projections, Middletown in the next 5 years will need to find 154 million plans to do all of the long-term planning goals over the next 5 years. Where is that money coming from? When I reviewed your strategic plan numbers of what it takes to run my school, I removed salaries from that number because you told us there isn't a plan for layoffs. The utilities, the insurance, and the repairs and maintenance of Port Monmouth School to operate comes out to, let me just be exact on this, I'll leave my classes, $186,526 a year. Not $1.5 million. What is in the $1.3 million? Capital plans that we want to do? Capital niceties? You're shutting down a school for once. It's just appalling to me. And again, to echo Jesse, the 5-year plan for the next 5 years has not been done. You cannot guarantee us that class sizes won't increase in New Monmouth. We just found out today there's a possibility of a 5th kindergarten class. What's going to happen the next year? A 5th first grade? A 6th kindergarten? Everything changes. Your numbers are crazy. I implore you, the board, to vote no.
We don't want to run out of time before he gets to speak.
Hi, I'm a 5th grader in Fort Monmouth school. And I'm proud to say that me, my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather have all attended Port Monmouth School. I don't want my school to close down because I am 6th generation of Port Monmouth. My family did a lot for the community. I feel closing the school or destroy the community. I also find it unfair that every grade under 5th can't graduate.
Because I think my fellow Fort Monmouth family has done an excellent job. I like to research, okay? And I came across, my name is Patricia Reed, by the way. I have 5 students I have 5 children, all went through Fort Monmouth. My husband went to Fort Monmouth, my father-in-law. You're talking about generations of families that you want to destroy, okay? I came across an article on the School Superintendents Association website called Dumbing Down by Sizing Up. Why Smaller Schools Make More Sense If You Want to Affect Student Outcomes by Craig Howley. I'm going to touch on a few points from this article. For whatever reason, many educational leaders have come to the notion that large schools, 1, provide better learning environments, 2, do so at less cost, and 3, cultivate learning better than small schools. Recent research, however, suggests that on average, none of these claims, I'll repeat that, none of these claims has much merit. The few before and after studies that have been done do not find significant differences in school district budgets after school closures. Again, there are no significant difference in school district budgets after school closures. Also, an article written by Herbert Wahlberg and Bill Fowler in the October 1987 issue of Educational Research, and I found out all this information on a half-hour lunch break, by the way. They say their research shows big schools to be less effective per dollar in producing student achievement. Their inclusion suggests consolidation actually squanders money, okay? And for those of you who don't understand what squandering money means, that means to waste money. Also, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Thomas Hilton has also written about school consolidation, which can be found on Save Our Land and SaveOurTowns.org. I will quote from one of his articles. Large consolidated schools have not improved education. An extensive body of literature shows most students do better in small community schools.
Senior at North and a freshman here at North, all who attended Fort Monmouth Elementary. I'm going to talk about the whole Title I that we're going through. One of the answers from the other night was stated, Fort Monmouth will provide consistent Title I status to New Monmouth and help control class sizes. I don't understand how you can guarantee this number when there hasn't even been a study done since 2017. I'm going to bring up standing again. Well, I did my own research because we really don't have time to waste for you guys to do your study. From March 24th, 2017 to January 30th, 2020, there have been 106 closings in Port Monmouth, all that would be zoned for the Port Monmouth Elementary School. Out of these 106 houses, 59 of them were sold within a month. Some in a week. 83 out of 106 of these homes sold for over $300,000. 51 sold for over $350,000 or more. Port Monmouth is a very desirable area right now. One main reason is because Middletown has community schools. People love that offer. Sorry. So again, how can you guarantee Port Monmouth will even keep up the Title I status? Can anybody guarantee that with these numbers I'm putting out? Anybody? No? How about the enrollment? Can we keep the enrollment low? There's no way that you can guarantee that New Monmouth is not going to overcrowd when all these young families that moved in from a little house to a 4 or 5 bedroom house, you cannot tell me that they're millennials not having children. There's no way. Nobody's buying a 5-bedroom house and not planning on a child at this point. The last 3 years, Port Monmouth enrollment has already been increasing. Although the whole district seems to be decreasing, the last 3 years, Port Monmouth has gone back up to 2 class levels. This year being the highest, we already have 38 enrolled for kindergarten for next year. That's almost 20 a class already, and who knows how many more might enroll. As we all know, enrollment is down district-wide. In 2011, we had 10,057 students. In 2018, we had 9,425 students. This is a loss of 632 students. That's a big number, actually very disturbing. Not to mention again, a huge increase in staff and salaries, especially with the administration. How many different programs have been purchased during that time that we no longer use, the money that has gone to waste? And for the record, everyone, Dr. George started in our district in 2011, and these numbers have gone down by 600.
My name is Joe McCarron. I am a kindergartner. Good evening, my name is Joe McCarron. I'm a kindergartner, fourth grader at Fort Monmouth Elementary School. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My comments are specifically just for you members of the board. I come here tonight bearing a gift to you. I have with me many letters and drawings from the children of Fort Monmouth, all written and drawn for you, all telling you in their own words, in their own pictures, why they do not want their school to close. Let's face it, at the end of the day, this isn't about you, this isn't about me, it's not about any other parent in here. It's about these kids. It's about these kids, and in this mass hysteria of numbers and statistics and information that we keep throwing at each other, these kids are crying out for you to hear them. I ask that as you consider this consolidation decision in the next 2 weeks, please look at each of these letters and drawings and share them with each other and really consider if this is the right move or not for these kids. I thank you for your time this evening, and I really do wish you well over the next 2 weeks as you face this tough choice. I think I speak for many here when I say that if I or any other Fort Monmouth family can be of any assistance to any of you in further clarifying our points as to why we are against this proposal, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You are always welcome at Fort Monmouth Elementary. You are always welcome at Fort Monmouth Elementary School, and I hope that is something that we are going to be able to continue to say for many, many, many years. I don't know any of you personally, but I can almost guarantee that when you decide to step up and volunteer to run and sit on this board, I know that each and every one of you did so in the hopes that you might make a difference in even just one child's life. This is your chance to make that difference, not only for one child, but for close to 200 of them.
In this session of public comment was slotted to for 30 minutes. We started to go. If this without objection, we want the rest of those people.
Can I get, we're going to let the rest of
What I'm suggesting is that the board more in line next week, but just letting the other members of the public know that after this board will be in this session and that thing.
So after the woman who just raised her cane, should be the last one to say that.
Hi, my name is Amy Beaver, and I actually have 2 children at Enrollment. I have spoken at every meeting, and I will continue to speak at every meeting. I'm asking the board to vote no. I'm asking the board to vote no on this proposal for my own children's well-being and the rest of the community. I do not think that this is in the best interest of anybody here, either for Enrollment or for Monmouth. So, I've had questions for the board. Some have been answered in the facts, some have not. So you talked tonight about the district and the Title I funding. And you mentioned multiple times about how it benefits the district. Multiple times I've heard you say about the district. How is it going to benefit the combination of our two schools? Shouldn't the Title I funds go to the schools that need the funds? Could you please put that in the facts and answer that how it's going to benefit my children and these children, and not the rest of the district? I also did some research, like everybody else, and I noticed that in 2015 you had a strategic plan, and there was a $19 million bond that was issued. You used the money in that bond to put new roofs on every single school in the district except for Port Monmouth. Sorry, my bad. Okay. Trash that, sorry. Didn't look like Port Monmouth was in the plan. They weren't in the plan. Okay. Have you done a traffic safety study around the surrounding areas in the school? I mentioned this the other night. I live around the corner from the New Monmouth Elementary School, and I'm extremely concerned about the traffic going in and out of that school, and the traffic being in that parking lot. It's a very small circle driveway for the buses, and the space for the cars to fit into. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to also deal with that when we have special events at the school? I mentioned this at the first meeting, which I don't know if a lot of you were even there. At the first meeting, I mentioned how we have Veterans Day assemblies, there are holiday sing-alongs for the kids, there are all these different events for the parents to go to. That parking lot with just the New Monmouth community is packed. You have to get there early, you got to fight for a space. How is that? How are we going to keep all of those programs for that my children love? My children are already talking about who they're going to invite next year for the special person lunch. How are you going to keep all of that when you combine our two schools? The other thing, you're talking about that we only need 28 classrooms for the combination. Great. Right now, there's a separate music room, there's a separate art room, they have gym, they have lunch inside the gymnasium. How can you guarantee that you are not going to merge the music and the art room, or that they're going to have to eat lunch in their classroom? I can tell you that my daughter had a hard transition from kindergarten to first grade for the fact that she had to sit at her desk more. If she has to sit in that classroom for an extended period of time, it's not going to go well. So how can you guarantee that those special activities that they currently have, when you increase the population of the schools, is going to stay that way? And the other thing is, have you done a 5-year projection or any year projection outside of this current school year coming up in 2020? Because you keep saying how you have the capacity for next year. What about the previous years? My kids are only in first grade, so I still have 4 more years at New Monmouth. Have you decided on what the current projections are going to be? And how can you guarantee that these special things that happen at the school currently will not end? I know, right? And the other thing that I want to bring up, and somebody else already did, I asked the other night about the $4 million in the levy that expired, and I'm kind of curious if you could explain more about that and how that happened, because we wouldn't be in this position. And have you considered issuing a bond that's currently being recalled? You have a bond that I saw that was supposed to be on tonight's agenda, I think, about a bond that's being recalled, that it's been paid off. So what about issuing a bond? We did that in 2015 for the new roof and for all the other things that the turf, I think that's on school. Yeah. Issue a bond. See this one.
Hello, my name is Johanna McCarty, and I'm a parent I had actually 5 children. They had all gone through the school system. I had a 17-year-old who was a junior in North, a 13-year-old who was a 7th grader in Thorne. I have a 3rd grader who is thriving at Port Monmouth. She started there. She's in the Gifted and Talented program. I also have a yet unregistered kindergartner that will go to Port Monmouth in the fall, and another kindergartner that will go in the fall of 2023. was brought up, born and raised in Jersey City. I came here with my family. I uprooted them from our charter school where my sons went, where, mind you, my mother was their school nurse. But and yet I uprooted them and brought them to Fort Monmouth, where we moved a month before Sandy and knew nobody. My 17-year-old junior would love that I'm recanting that he came into Fort Monmouth crying, and our beloved principal at the time, Mr. McNeil, hugged him and brought him into his office, where he talked to him and where he cried every day for a week that week. And that is the family that we were welcomed into when we came here, and then had to go through Sandy a month later. I would be remiss if I didn't speak tonight, because my daughter had written you a letter personally. Dear Mr. Head of all the schools, you'll see her letter in there. It's from Scarlet Midget. When she looks at me tonight and said, are they gonna close my school? I can't go home and tell her that I didn't try to do something. To implore you to vote no. I know a little bit about transparency also. I'm a taxpayer, and my husband and I are both registered nurses. I just would want you to vote with the same transparency that you would want me as a nurse to sit at your child's bedside, or your mother's, or your wife's. So I'm just please asking you to vote no.
Hi, my name is Colleen Monterelli. I have 3 children. I have spoken before, but I don't need to speak facts tonight because my family behind me has already done that, so I'm going to be personal. But I do just want to have one question. Ms. Walker, you had the lovely slide, you wrote down, if we come to New Monmouth, or, keep this as a family, or if, the possibilities of if we have to distribute to other schools. Was that done for other schools too? Like, I appreciate seeing up there, I really did, but did we do, like you mentioned, River Plaza and all these other schools, like, did they do that same breakdown for other schools too? Like, if you do have to break the community apart?
Excuse me, miss, if you could just make comments, ask your
Just
question.
right here, I was asking.
I see you. I'm saying, you could just make your comments.
I thought it was questions. Okay, all right, questions. So, my other question is more personal. I have a mother of 3. My oldest has ADHD. Hey, it's been a struggle since 7th grade, but we have a wonderful school, and we're still not out of the woods with that. That same child has had such a tumultuous little life for a 10-year-old. He was there, he went through Hurricane Sandy, he had to walk in his bedroom and see all of his brand new toys that he just had for his birthday, all over the floor and destroyed. Unless you've gone through that, our community did, our school did, that's a whole different mental issue in itself without the ADHD. Then you have the displacement, and we have the different houses, and we have all this. Then my second child, big time anxiety. Nothing to do with Sandy because he was only 2 months old. He has anxiety issues. My baby, my 3-year-old, I don't know what his problem's gonna be yet. All 3 of my babies lost their dad 2.5 years ago. Now, I don't know what that's going to bring to me in their future. Right now, my kids are thriving. They have an amazing, little Port Monmouth community behind them, and they are thriving. And I'm happy with that, but I don't know what that's going to bring me in the future. My 3-year-old, I'm more concerned about my 3-year-old and my anxiety child, my 7-year-old. I need to be able to tell them that if they're going to a new school, they're going to be there. They're going to stay there. I need to see the plan that tells us that our whole of Fort Monmouth community will always be at that school forevermore. You can't say that because you haven't done the census. Now, I think eventually you are going to rezone, and you're going to split what would currently be the Fort Monmouth Elementary School and then filter us out to other schools, because by that point it's not so much of a blow. And if you're going to do that, then use the bad word, just tell us that. If you are so gung-ho that your plan is good, then tell us the whole plan. Let us know your 7-year plan, your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan. 3 years, we are not going to go down. We are building. We're going to have an influx of all these buildings. We're going to be overpopulated. And it's not about just saying in my school, it's about my youngest school. Is he going to get to 3rd grade? If you keep us there for 5 years, by the time my baby is in 3rd grade, is he then going to be bused to another school? I want my child, I moved to Port Monmouth for a community, which I have. I want my children to know that their best friends that happen to live on the dry side they are going to be going to the same elementaries and the same middle schools. And you need to have that information before you go gung-ho closing an elementary school. Now, the facts speaks for themselves, but it's common sense. Why would you go and close down a school before you've fully done your homework on that? If you have done the homework, show it to us. Tell us that you're probably going to read that for 5 years, and then you're probably going to redistrict the whole of our district. Tell us that. Let us sit on it. Let us think. Let us support you, but we're not going to be able to because you're not being transparent. If you want our support, if you want us to vote you back in, if you don't want to lose your job, be transparent. Tell us. Have faith that we're not stupid and we know what's best for our kids. But you can't tell me or promise me that my 3-year-old is going to bounce between a bunch of different elementary schools. If my school has to go to another school, I'm a big PTA supporter. Why would I put my time and energy into another school that they may not be there for the rest of their little time in elementary school? That's it.
Hello, my name is Michael Jackson. I have 3 children, 1 south, 2 river. I'm here today because I listen to people from Port Monmouth School. I figured if something like this can happen to them, it can happen to us. The things that go through my head are, A, did you do a number check of the new neighborhoods that are being built, the one across from Target, and the one across from Kohl's, and God knows how big that's going to be. That could be like the glassworks over there in Aberdeen, with 2,000 new homes. These numbers are big. Why close up some of us? Get some refitting. I always believe in refitting, fixing. Stop redoing football fields twice in 2 years. Stop. Twice. A football field twice? Do it like the first time. The roof of North, I've seen done 3 or 4 times. I don't get what's going on there. I want to know, the rest of us took the Title I, money for the, I don't know what's the word, disenfranchised, not so lucky. Meanwhile, they're looking for money from the state to help them. But meanwhile, we're getting ready to give this guy 14.99% bonus. People live here. People like them. People don't like change. I get that. I haven't heard anything about fixing. I don't understand just going out 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 million and half the fixing. I don't know. It's crazy. Kind of sounds like the town hall they want to build. 20 million, 50 million electric bill. It doesn't make sense to me. So instead of being up there, tell us what needs to be done with a quick answer, look deeper, find, don't be a villain. Be the hero. Be the people, vote. People are comfortable. Figure out how to make them comfortable. Cut costs in the right places. Just like I don't take a vacation and you have to cut costs. I like to go on vacation. Can't. I need money saved. Figure it out. Instead of sitting there at a dead end and just close school. Change it. And a lot of kids today are they need special abilities. It's like it's crazy. It's a growing number of that. And when they get put into it, they need that constant. And not to mention, this little change that you think is all about money, it's going to change the course of their lives. I went to River Plaza. I had great memories from that. I had friends that went there. That their kids are going there. So it's like, I get it. Do you get it? No. So do the harder, just harder work. Fix it, don't end it.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Dr. George, you have some nerve going into my son's class and messing with his head.
telling him that the Koala Cove that was just unveiled, what, a month ago? Yeah. A month ago. Is gonna go to the better school to get a better education. Really? That's what you're telling these kids, a 10-year-old? But then at the same conversation, you said, but I'm gonna try my best to save Port Monmouth. Do you know what a lie is? It came right out of your mouth today. Many times. There's a lady who posted, I can't remember her first name, guys, so you have to help me. Walsh, somebody named Walsh, posting about how our kids that go to that school are playing outside in the highways there, the toxins and the fumes. Do you see any of us deformed? Except me right now, but that's okay. Do you see any of us having third eyes or losing arms or legs or something because we're deformed because of the toxins that we smell? We're absolutely fine. Just leave the goddamn school alone.
So I want to thank everybody for their comments. We'll try to answer, go back and forth, try to answer as many as we can now. We've taken notes, anything we can't answer now. We'll go we'll make sure we put it on the frequency. The 36 frequently asked questions on the website, we'll add to that. So first I want to start today with the interaction with the students, just to be completely clear. It was a positive interaction. I wanted to make sure at the end of the day, 10 minutes before the school day ended, that I delivered letters to students who had reached out and written letters to me. And my message to them was that we applauded them participating in the democratic process, that they have the power to change the world, that their words and their written words matter. And I got to say that in front of their classmates. Some had asked me questions. Some had asked me questions in the hallway. Many had participated in our the very first night where for 2 hours, we just allowed the community to speak. Many of the students had participated in that first 2 hours, as well as the second meeting. A few participated tonight. Some were in the audience. I just wanted to make sure that they knew they were respected, they valued, that their thoughts and their words mattered. It was a very positive conversation. No one cried, no one was upset, because it was very positive and uplifting. That's what happened, 10 minutes before the end of the school day. Second, I want to talk to...
Board members, the public comment session is over. Would you please not disrupt the board meeting? Thank you so much.
Second, I want to answer the question about the class size and how. So basically, it's a math problem. If you have 1 or 2 sections and you get to, if the cap is 27 and you get to 28, you go down to 2 sections of 14. That's inefficient at 14, and especially when it's replicated across the district with 12 elementary schools. So when you have more sections, 4 sections as opposed to 2, you have more levers to get more consistent class size across the grade level. That's the intention. Ms. Gallagher, you want to speak to the Inspire Bank Act? Ms. Story, I'm sorry.
I think you have to turn the mic off. And there was some questions about the expiration of the bank cap that we talked about. Charlie. There was some question about the expired bank cap and what's going to expire and why that wasn't utilized and so forth. We did talk the other night about that concept, and about the fact that there have been times where the district's tax levy did not go up to the 2% that was allowed, and it was below the 2%. We had reallocators, we had really expanded cap. We also talked about the fact that the state aid, and some of you talked about it as well, has also varied over the past 8-9 years. After the initial cut in state aid that we had, that brought the state aid down to around $12 million or so, 13 million. It did, and we showed the graph the other night, where it actually did climb back up over the next few years, up to the point where it was close to $18 million, and then remained flat for years after that. With that change in funding, it made it difficult to know what would be coming, going forward. And as board members and as the administrative team, you have to strike a balance between what is needed to support the budget and being responsible to the tax base here in Middletown. So when we were able to put together a budget that addressed all of the initiatives that we were looking to address and programs and so forth, and we were able to do that without utilizing the 2% in the tax levy, that's the budget that was put forward. And although, we did talk about the fact that there has been a loss of purchasing power from that tax levy not being assessed, there's also been a savings to the people of Middletown for that tax levy. So the fact that the state aid has been somewhat volatile over the last several years, would know what the long-term plan was for the state aid besides what they would tell you year after year. And this has been a discussion of districts across the state about the funding formula and how it hasn't been either fully funded or the factors have changed. There's been changes in wealth calculations, there's been changes in income values of properties. It makes it very difficult to do long-term planning for the district. When they did come out with S2, that at least gave a blueprint, although we didn't like the blueprint we were given. At least we had a blueprint of what the aid would be looking like over the next 7 years. Now, we still think that that's not how it should look. But at this point, this is all we have to plan to go forward over the next several years, is what has been issued to us and signed into law by the state. So I hope that clarifies the issue. The fact that the state aid funding has not been steady and has been subject to many changes. I mean, I've been here since 2010, and that's the way it has been. You just don't know year to year what is going to happen. The only plan that I've seen since I've been here is the plan that's been issued S2, and we have seen the reductions so far that were part of that law back in 2018. So I hope that clarifies.
I'd like to speak to the $50 million that was in the governor's speech as proposed one time, stated very clearly, one time additionally to be split between 200 districts. Would there have been times in the past where we have received additional aid and in the same year had it removed? That can be extremely problematic. When asked about it, and I responded today in the paper, you might have read, I responded yesterday when it came out as a possibility, yes, welcome all additional aid. But the timing of when that aid comes, number one, can be problematic, or exactly how much money, or whether or not actually stay in the process that still has to take place from the governor's proposal before it goes to approval. This really goes back to, the funding formula and our concerns with the funding formula. For example, towns like Middletown, where they reassess the value of homes every year, that calculation comes up as far as under adequacy or over adequacy in funding, or our well calculation, as Mrs. Gallagher mentioned earlier. it's impacted in comparison to other communities where they are not regularly assessing or haven't assessed homes for a very long period of time. So there's a lot of things about that we really question. I plan to go and make my case for the funding formula and how it has to be updated. I spoke last year at the budget hearings, the Senate budget hearings, plan to do that again. Another real driver is special education funding. You know, we only fund special education after an extraordinary aid, after it comes to $45,000 per student, and then even then, only at 59% of the total cost. So there's a lot of things that relates to funding that, as Mrs. Gallagher pointed out, are really problematic, and we are in that conversation. We're in that conversation on the state level. We're participating. We're going to continue to participate in that conversation. But that proposed, and it's only proposed at this point, additional aid to be split between 200 districts is not something that is guaranteed, nor have we been given any exact numbers on that. The next I want to talk about is the traffic. We did address the traffic in the slide, so I would ask that you go back and look. We addressed it from the standpoint of the number of walkers versus the number of bus students and how many students there would be. So that information is also detailed in that slide. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the demographic study. So we're in year 3 of the demographic study. That's a 5-year study. So all that information in there is accurate. It does include, we've been given all the information from the township originally, all of, included in our study, Taylor Lane, the additional building that's coming online at this time. Taylor Lane won't even come online until 21-22, but that is part of our demographic study, as well as the other properties that have been brought on. So the demographic study is current. We are going to be in the process of doing another one, but it's not that it's outdated. I just wanted to clarify that. I don't know from your standpoint if there are other things that you thought needed to be addressed, speak as
Well, I have the opportunity in a timely fashion. I just want to respond to the Title I question in terms of funding. And I'm looking for the parent, mom, who asked about how does the money get spent. Thank you for raising your hand. The funding that is designated is, as we said, it follows the child. So the student who is designated as economically disadvantaged, the funding follows them. How it is spent can vary depending on that student's need. Not every student not all needs are equal, right? Just because you're so economically disadvantaged doesn't mean you have the same situation as others. So I'll let Ms. Shaw, or Mrs. Alphone, it's so new, we're still getting used to it. I'll let her also stand. We have used the money differently because we are targeted assistant programs, like we've said. It has to be specific to the child. So we run before and after care programs. Some students, it's more social emotional issues, and support that they need, not necessarily academic. I will say the majority of the students, it is academic need, and that's why we fund the excess salaries for interventionists to work with those students. Best practice, and as the guidelines suggest, the recommendations, is that you want to provide more in addition to what they receive, their normal course of instruction. You don't want to just pull them out of the content and have them miss direct instruction that everyone else is receiving. You want it to be above and beyond that, in addition to that instruction. Any other?
Just, someone else had brought up, I think that it was in the same conversation, the idea that why can't we have that funding be applied to other schools? I also had spoken about that threshold, that 10% and above. So certain schools within our district are not designated as Title I schools because they don't have that economically disadvantaged percentage. So that funding can never be applied to students that exist in those schools, even if they are economically disadvantaged. Just to kind of expand on what Mrs. Pincus had said, we have used Title I funding mainly for salary support to increase the time that reading development teachers and math specialists conduct interventions for those students that are economically disadvantaged, while also servicing the other students within the school. We've also bought materials and supplies programmatically to support students in those Title I situations. There is a requirement within the grant for a mandatory parent involvement set aside. We ran a large parent Title I night last year. Some of you may have been in attendance with your children, where we sent them home with summer reading materials and summer math supplies. There is also a homeless set aside for students that are deemed homeless that we have to allocate a certain amount of money to support their needs. So, that's kind of Title I in a nutshell, and what we spend it on, or what we've historically spent it on, the restrictions to spending, and why it can only be used for certain students in designated schools. That's why that school-wide status is so much more beneficial and favorable when you're looking at how you can apply funding.
Mrs. Smith, you had asked about some curriculum items. I want to address the increase in curriculum purchases for textbooks. Some of those are a combination of hard copy text, the younger grades, especially. The one textbook adoption, and Dr. Kerrigan's going to be speaking about it soon, the major textbook adoption in this budget is for elementary mathematics. Quite honestly, the publishers have gotten smart. There's no way around it. They have created a system in which we now are locked into required readoptions because a lot of the components are online, you're correct, but not all, but your subscription runs out. In the past, we used to be able to adopt, curriculum adoptions, purchase curriculum adoptions, and the majority of it was hard copy materials. And at the end of the 5 or 6 year cycle, if it was still, meeting the standards and relevant to the instruction and supporting student learning, you could get away with it for a couple of years and extend it, especially in a hard budget year where you had other curriculums coming up or other expenses and you defray them. Now, they've created this system, and every district is struggling with this. I talked to curriculum directors across the state and across the country. They handcuff you. So our current subscription to our elementary mathematics resource is expiring in June. We have no other option. What Dr. Kerrigan has done, though, is he's negotiated really strongly with the publisher, and they are allowing us to defer the payment. So in the original proposed budget, it shows, I think it's $750,000 just for elementary mathematics. We've been able to negotiate with them that they'll let us defer the payment with no interest over 2 years, so it helps alleviate somewhat the stress on the budget. But the textbooks adoptions are critical. They have to be up to date, and in fact, when we submit our budget, we just got it today again, the reminder, the curriculum directors and supervisors are working on this right now. The state requires that we submit to them and explain to them how there are dedicated monies in the budget toward improving curriculum and instruction and providing staff professional development. Those are required expenditures. We have to provide detailed explanations to them. They want to ensure that we are providing your students with the best, most quality education, and that is always our goal.
Okay, and then there was the question about did we consider other schools other than, and actually did an analysis on other schools other than just Port Monmouth. Yes, we did. We, as I said before, our goal was not to redistrict, not to send students in any school to a school that they would end up going to a different middle school or a different high school. So we did look at certain schools, the smaller schools. I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to do something like this to a $400 or $500 or $600 student school. But, so we looked at schools, like we looked at River Plaza. There is no school in their sending, there's no multiple schools in their sending zones that we could split that school and put them in. So that was off the table. The same thing for Leonardo, Navasink, the smaller schools. It wasn't a big analysis because quickly you can see that there just isn't a capacity to take the students from that school and put them in another school. New Monmouth, on the other hand, had the capacity, not a huge capacity. We couldn't take a 400 student school and put that in New Monmouth, but they did have the capacity for 200 plus students to go over there. And that's why we did a couple of scenarios with Port Monmouth. Why don't we start from the top? Why don't we start with everyone goes through.
So, I'm sorry. Excuse me, ma'am, the public comment period is over. The administration is not going to respond to questions. I understand, however, from the protocol standpoint, it's not a discussion. There were comments and questions raised. The administration and board is trying to respond to as many as possible. If you're done, Ms. Walker, you can move on from me. Thank you.
I just wanted to address two more comments that had come up during the previous comment period. There was a parent who asked about bonds, and there is an item on the agenda for bonds this evening. We were asked why we don't issue bonds. First of all, we are not allowed, we don't have to follow the same rules as a municipality. We cannot issue bonds unless it goes out for a referendum to the community and it's voted upon in an election. And that's how we do it. We don't have the capacity to just issue a bond without going through that process. The item that's on the agenda tonight is actually, we call it refinancing of outstanding bonds that we currently have. It's not issuing any new debt and it's not paying off any debt. It's refinancing it at a lower interest rate so that we will be able to realize savings on the interest on those bonds through their maturity. So that will generate savings in our debt service for the next several years until those bonds mature. That's all it is. It's simply a refinancing. It's not issuing of any new debt and it's not any debt that we're paying off. The other question that came up was how did the district adjust to the aid cuts that were done back in 2010-11 and why are we struggling to close the gap on the budget at this point? That, right after the cuts were done in 2000 for the 10-11 budget, that's actually when I started here in the district, and I can tell you that the way that it was dealt with is there was a lot of staff that was eliminated, and a lot of it was necessary staff that we ended up having to replace back into the budget in subsequent years to support necessary and mandated programs here in the district. There's also been, as much work as we have done with the facilities, there's a lot of work that has not been done with the facilities, and that is something that we talk about a lot, and that's why there's a lot of money in this draft long-range facilities plan, and it doesn't even address things that we would like to do with the facilities. It's basically things that we need to do with the facilities. So there were a lot of things that were cut that ended up having to be put back, whether it was because it was for special education programs and IEPs required it, or things that had to be done with the facilities. Somebody brought up the roofs. That was a prime example. That is something that had not been done in the district for a very long time until we did a re-roofing, over the last few years, or really it was over 5 years ago now, but we did it over a few years. So these are all the things that were not being done, that as we ended up getting increases back in state aid, and we did find some other ways to do it. We did do a referendum because we got ROD grants from the state. That was really the main. We've done an assessment of the roofs and some other things, and that happened to coincide with when that funding was made available from the state, which has not been available since. But that helped us with that project. That $19 million bond was supplemented with $13 million from the state in ROD grants to get done a larger district-wide project. So I just wanted to clarify some of those points that have come up during the questions. Okay, Dr. George, did you want to finish up with your answers, or are you done? Okay. These are very cute letters, by the way. Let's see. So we're moving on to our committee reports. We do our comments now, or we can do them later, or we usually do them after the Finance and Facilities Committee report. Okay, go ahead.
No, because for the last 2 weeks, I have to speak from my heart. I'm born and raised in Middletown. I'm very proud of the community I live in, and I chose to serve. And it's in no way a grandstand, but this is how I feel about what's going down. We had a strategic planning forums, 3 of them, and we listened to the people. I went to everyone. I stood in the back. I listened to the people coming in. I listened to the people going out. I saw the distrust that we lost once the rumors were started about banding and one high school. And that's not how it should go. I pretty well thought, okay, we're not going to be closing the school because the numbers didn't back that. So I figured, okay, so this will come up in strategic planning. No way did I ever think that the day after the strategic planning meeting, or the night of, that we were going to be addressing closing a school. It's from my heart, so please don't clap for me. I just really have to get this out. I don't understand where it came from. We had one facilities meeting, and it was suggested there. So I did not attend the meeting after the strategic planning one because I felt that our fame to claim was that our budget meetings were in the public and that the public would hear the facts of the budget at the same time as us. And I didn't want to go against that distrust. I do understand, though, that there are some things that you had to discuss before it went to the public. I think we're doing a big disservice to our community because the whole strategic plan is not to condense one part of town, but to relieve overcrowding in all of our schools and touch community. And we've been challenged this. We had a meeting October 30th a few years ago, and guess what? We did that wrong too. We went out there and we told everybody it was a proposal, but the board members, those of us that voted no for it, we knew it wasn't a proposal. We knew it was a done deal as we went to that meeting that night and we voted. But yet we were told it was a proposal. I feel the same thing is happening here. I read the newspaper article. It said the board will vote on March 4th to move this forward. That doesn't sound like a proposal to me. Okay, so I'm going to get off of that, but really want to go on to some process. I understand the budget is something to be done. My problem is the way it's done. We didn't give anybody any eyesight that this was coming. I really think the strategic plan should be done first. We know that moving in lines is the #1 thing on the strategic plan, so let's just do it and do it right. Do it at one time. I asked several times over the last 2 years about the rumors of closing Port Monmouth, River Plaza, and Navasing. Each time I was told no one was talking about it. With that being said, I don't understand how this decision was made in a week. I think, I want to get it out there, I truly feel Newmont is a great school. And Port Monmouth kids will thrive if that's what the outcome is. I think any one of our schools in Middletown are great schools. We have 17 great communities, but that's what we're forgetting. We have communities, we have neighborhoods. And that's what makes Middletown a desirable place to live. And I think that we as a school board are giving our community much faith. And this is all my personal perspective. People were talking about votes. Do you know what the money that we passed was to lower taxes? And at the time, people wanted lower taxes. We did not go to the 2%. That's what the bank cap is. We lowered taxes. There's no guarantee that that money was going to go to any school building. It might have went to more staff. There's no guarantee, so you have to understand that. The way to get money to fix our schools is to gain trust in our community and go out for a referendum and fix something in every school. I sat in your place many years ago, and I have to disclose this. I was a Port Monmouth resident until 2014. I went to Port Monmouth School, so did my children. I have a special place in my heart for that. I left right after Sandy, so I remember Leonora and I taking Dr. George around town and showing him the devastation of Port Monmouth, Leonardo, and Belford right after Sandy. So we do understand where a lot of hardship has come in. I was excited 2 years ago that this board was forming a legislative committee, and no insult to Tom, to the chair. I was excited about it because I brought up, wow, this is great. We can bring somebody in to help our community learn how to lobby for the funds that we're gonna lose. And I feel we failed the community because we have done nothing. Dr. George, you say you go and you lobby, but we need more than you. We need our entire school community to get out there and start fighting for what we're losing. And what we get out of that, we might not succeed, but what we get out of that is an educated public and an educated board doing it together. And that's what we need. We need to stop pitting one another from one side of town, one school to the other, against each other. And we need to learn how to work together. Because that's what's going to make our community. And I truly implore you to find a way to come up with the money and not close the school until our strategic plan is done. The budget for this year to me, we're putting the cart before the horse here. We do. What we really needed was this room filled with our entire community to back what's happening here, because it is affecting everyone, and it will. Let's just do it right and gain trust back. We're losing trust with our. We lost trust with the strategic plan because rumors started. No one has faith that we're going to do the right thing. So let's start by doing the right thing, and let's redo this. I really think this is important. And another thing is that we're going to close Fort Monmouth. Everybody else out there, don't plan on using neighborhood schools to save your schools, because guess what? We will have a neighborhood without schools, so it won't make a difference. We need to keep that. That's what makes Middletown great. Those of us that have lived here our whole life, we know that. We've been through ups and downs. I've made some hard decisions, although on Facebook I'm hearing that I was always chickened out. Never chickened out on a hard decision. But if I don't agree with the decision, I am not going to vote for a decision. It doesn't mean I'm a wimp. And let me tell you, when I heard on the website that the fumes in Port Monmouth, nobody wants to go to that school or nobody should go, what a disgrace that is. And maybe some of you up here will disagree with it, but I think I turned out okay.
Maybe it's time to go back and look at the budget again. Because this is what, you know, everybody has been noticed. This is one point fix. You close the school, you get the money, whatever it is. I know it's about the money, the 2.6 million that we need. But you close the school, you get the money this year. We have things going forward. What she's saying is wrong, because if you educate people, bottom line is the budget has to go out to be voted on. Little at a time, we have other things coming down the pipe. Redistricting has to be done. We tried to do it last time, it didn't get done. It needs to be done. Then you have to close the school, you have to close the school. But you need to look at the whole picture. We cut stuff from the budget, go over the budget again. Let's clean it up a little bit more for this year. Come back to it.
Just two things, and you know very well that the budget is due soon, right?
Yes,
And
it's not going to the 14th,
so
the 19th, whatever.
I think it's important to understand that if we do not support this, right, that we will lose teen teachers district-wide.
We have only, 3 budget meetings, and the board has not put input into any of them, and they're all on film.
Okay, there is, can you let me speak for a moment? I appreciate Mrs. Maywee's perspective. Thank you very much. I do have a concern about going out for a referendum. Going for a referendum will be very. We have. That's really disrespectful. I've been very disrespectful to you. Okay? What I want to say about.
Let her talk.
Come on, please.
Let her talk.
Okay, I want to explain why a referendum may not pass here. I'm a mom of 2 kids in the district too. I would just like you to know that there are 65,000 people in Middletown, right? Only 20,000 of them are public school children's parents. It'll be very difficult to pass a referendum. There is no magic money. We're in the middle of a financial crisis, and I think we need to take this seriously and think about that side of it as well. I understand Mrs. Maywee's points, and I appreciate them, but there's also the other side of it too that I think we're not looking at. And while I appreciate all of you coming, speaking your mind, we have gotten other emails in favor of the other emails in favor of redistricting, like you. Yes, in favor of also things. So I just want the perspectives, because there are other perspectives.
Go out for a referendum.
We're not saying in the future, when we need to really go out and put money into our buildings, if we did it the right way, and we gained the trust of our community, and we educated our school parents, that referendum was passed. And I know because I've been on the board when 3 times the referendum passed. So I think we underestimate our community a little bit. I think we have to separate. I'm not saying do it now. I'm saying I think we need to do strategic plans to go to school. But we need to bring our community in, get their trust back, so that we can put more money into our schools. And you would be surprised that a referendum would pass if you put something in every school that's much needed. The community could rally together, you put that budget ad hoc, you put that information groups where our people go out and talk to the community about what's needed in our schools instead of what's just needed in 1 school or 2 schools. It would be every school. And you've got to have a little faith in our community. I don't know who's telling you. Right before that January 1st meeting on moving the school board budget. So I've been on the board and I've been elected in an April election and a January election. It doesn't matter if what time you do it, but what does matter is if you have an election in April, they do a referendum, you get the school people out there to vote for it and support it. I have faith in my community.
Let's move on to our committee reports. So we'll start with the technology. Dave Subiak, please.
First, I want to take the board on some network server upgrades we recently completed. We're continuously upgrading our network components in district, more specifically our virtual servers and file storage systems. In the past month, we upgraded the file servers in all three middle schools from server 2008 to server 2016. The high schools were completed in late fall, and our elementaries were all completed over the winter. So now all our district file servers, as well as other enterprise servers, are all running the latest 2016 server software. Microsoft 2016 offers better security and runs more efficiently than previous versions. The greater efficiency allows us to continue to run those services on our legacy servers and provide disabilities and resources in a better manner. The second item we had on the informational technology is Adobe Spark. Adobe Spark is an application that is now it's integrated suite media creation application for mobile and web development. It is now included in our district Adobe Suite license. So it incorporates the basic three designs of designing apps, Spark Page, Spark Post, and Spark Video. So it allows our students to create, design, and share visual content storage for the device. So students can now create custom social media graphics, promotional videos, and single-page websites really effortlessly. We rolled it out to our high school students first, but as it just grew, we eventually rolled it out to our middle school students. And now we actually have it in a number of elementary classes on an as-requested basis. The last item I have on our agenda is Securely Order. Securely Order is a service we employ. It's an employee in district. What it does is scans and notifies us in the event of possible self-harm, bullying, or violence detected in students' email, docs, or drive. It uses sophisticated artificial intelligence engine to scan those locations for not only keywords, but actually the context of those keywords. The service has been available for some time beta mode, but because it's been in beta mode, it has inaccuracies and a great number of false positives. The new AI engine has cleaned that up, and now it allows us to begin to incorporate this tool in our everyday use. Recently, Mr. Rennell and I met and put together a securely ordered team for each of our schools. So what happens is in the event of a flag or trigger, we receive an email. That email is immediately forwarded to the security team in that particular school or student for them to respond on. In the event of a time-sensitive critical event, that conversation also happens to be a phone call from myself and Mr. Mel as well. Any questions?
It was all right. To Adobe's part, is that access via the Chromebooks, or is it only on the Macs?
Adobe Spark is an online application.
Okay.
So our students actually log into their Adobe account, and that's why we're able to offer it to groups of students as well as separate under the whole building.
Is the Adobe account to
We have Adobe Suite licensing for many of our graphic arts programs, for digital media and web development. The Adobe Spark is a new application Adobe released, and for K-12 education, they're offering it with no charge to anyone who has that Adobe Creative Suite license.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to student services.
We have a few things on the voting agenda for student services. There are a number of students for continuing and new home instruction. We have our continuing contract and services, our out-of-district placements, and the 3 settlement agreements that we discussed earlier. We also have on the voting agenda expansion of our ESS, that's our Effective School Solutions Program for a high school, which will help us keep minimally 2 students in district that we are hoping to start this year in March. We do the student services board committee meeting that we'll hold tomorrow night. So we'll have more information for the next board meeting. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to facilities and finance.
I'll do the committee meeting earlier in February 10th. I'll go through what was the agenda topics for that. The first part of the agenda was the long-range facilities plan. Spiegel Architectural Group. That's the firm that we it's a state form basically, where it goes to all the schools over 5 years. It talks about items that should be repaired, and they kind of prioritize it. It's not necessarily have to be done, but things that they recommend. The total number across all the schools was something like $154 million. Not everything. So basically what they do is they go through enrollment projections. They have the Department of Education cohorts. They look at building capacity calculations based on Department of Education facility efficiency standards and our district practices, functional capabilities on students. They do a bunch of different calculations. For class size, our class size is a lot higher than the state's. The state, for example, K-3, they're making assumptions like 21 kids in a class, 4 through 5, 23 kids in a class. We don't really have that across the district. They also have a lot of assumptions for open space, which is, for example, they'll assume that the average school is anywhere from 460 to 500 kids. That you have a separate cafeteria, from a separate APR / stage area, to also having a library, an actual library. So there's a lot of assumptions the state makes, so there's a lot of calculations they do. The bottom line is none of our elementary schools have enough open space based on the calculations. In terms of the long-range facilities plan, I think the last one was done, I think you mentioned was 2008 or 9. And I don't know, I guess when it's finalized, I don't know if we put it, make it available to the public. I don't remember how we do this. It was before my time on the board, but I'm guessing we show it somewhere at some point. So that was the one part of it. We have to do that because if you want to have any capital expenditures, you have to have it on the list. So you have to let the state know. So anytime you're going to build on a building or do anything, the state has to know that you have that in your plan. We also talked about, in terms of the capacities of the buildings. In other words, what would it take to understand how far a building could be built out in our district, in particular some of the secondary schools? That's always a question. Spiegel just mentioned there would have to be, there are studies they could do, but we have to engage them to do an analysis and specific study building by building. In other words, they couldn't just tell us, oh, XYZ school has XYZ extra capacity you could build. They'd have to actually go in there, site visit, and they went through the process briefly. We didn't go deeply into that because that wasn't really part of what we were talking about. We also mentioned that.
Which schools did you say they went into? Did you just say that?
What's that?
Which schools did they?
No. We asked them, in understanding expanding any building, that's always a question. Like, what would that take to understand, for example, XYZ middle school? So we're asking what that process is, just as we talked about the long-range facilities plan. They talked about they'd have to do some sort of site visit. Just that was part of some of the strategic planning type questions. Then we talked about, the LRFP, the long-range facilities plan, is being expedited because we have a securing our children's future funds that we're trying to get for security items. This is something we spoke about in the last finance and facilities meeting. So we're trying to get that out just so we can get those funds and we can allocate them to different projects for security. Then there was, the items we looked at in terms of the LFRP and other kinds of materials are posted on the board portal to go along with our notes of the meeting. I should probably have started with, and I apologize, the members are myself, John Little, Leonora Kennedy, Nick DeFranco, and Pam Rogers. Pam Rogers was not available for that meeting. Mike Donlin, I believe, was going to step in, but he also had a last-minute issue. Amy Doherty, the business administrator, Dr. George, superintendent, Walter Cahill, who's our director of facilities, was also present. I apologize, I should have started with that. The next item we talked about was another, the Bayshore HVAC units, not a good situation. The committee was informed about the 6 heat pump unit ventilators that must be removed and replaced at Bayshore Middle School. The thermal piping, which I believe is on the agenda tonight for a voting agenda. Thermal Pipe, the company, was awarded a contract to do the work on HVAC. I think the change, we're calling it a change order, because these folks had installed these units for us originally. The change order, I think, is $115,000, if my notes here are correct. The Spiegel has reviewed the change order pricing is found to be acceptable, so we're going to put it on the agenda tonight. That's not really a good thing. I think that's overall like 5 units in Bayshore that aren't working. That's unfortunate. We'll get that fixed. We have a preliminary list for security grant fund application. That's what we were talking about in terms of expediting the LFRP. I'm sorry, the long-range facilities plan. Ms. Dory reviewed the preliminary list for potential projects. Securing our children's future grant allocation is approximately $565,000. It includes interior window and exterior doorway glass reinforcement with shatter-resistant film, door locking mechanisms for inward opening doors, signage saying, this is our private property, please get off, you're being filmed. Additional surveillance cameras and additional access controls. The portal for the grant is not open yet, but we want to get the long-range facilities plan in so we can make the proper application. Here's another one that's not so great. Installation of the elementary HVAC units. I don't know if folks are aware what those look like. Those air units they put into the elementary school classrooms. There are issues with deteriorating insulation in all of the elementary schools. So basically, they're being ground out and spit out of the air unit. It's still being evaluated, the problem. It's been determined that I should say Mr. Cahill and his team are looking into multiple approaches for remediation, both in-house and outside. Now, the district received one initial quote from a vendor for insulation of the units for about $1 million, right? So we need to figure out how to fix these units because that's not good to have stuff being kicked out. So one of the outstanding questions is to find out how bad that is and if there's any sort of safety issues with that.
And we have since that we'll be able to perform these repairs in-house. We've got a system to do it. Mr. King is going to be dedicating a team to do that, addressing the units at the first day first and moving forward. So we're going to be doing the work in-house, dedicating people to do it over the next however many months it takes.
I apologize, there are a lot of topics, so I'll try to hurry, I'll try to speed it up a little bit. We were at the central office because Spiesel, the architect who's going over the long-range facilities plan, there's facilities there to make, to have presentations. We toured Bayshore, the administrative team showed the board members around. They showed us some of these issues with these alternate heating units that are being used to replace the inoperable HVAC. We have some like temporary units in some of the rooms. They're not perfect, but they're working for now. We looked at some of the architecture design of the second floor, some of the issues in terms of hampered cleaning of the floors. I don't know if a lot of people have been in some of the open spaces in Bayshore, but it's very, bizarre. Some of the ways they constructed very high ceilings, but then they have concrete classrooms in the middle of it. There's also like grooves and things that can't be cleaned out. You see piles of dust. We also looked at some of the other things like the gymnasiums. I don't know if folks have played basketball at Bayshore, but they don't have regulation-sized basketball courts. You can't fit a regular-sized basketball court in the main gym. There are a lot of oval parts of that building. So that we look through it. We try to look through buildings. We don't always have facilities meetings, especially during budget time. We try to go to different buildings to see what they look like, especially for folks who haven't always had a chance to see them. And then we also saw the security vestibule that's there. That's another item that comes up in long-range facilities planning, something we asked for. The elementary schools do not have that. The secondary schools do, and it was like Bayshore had one added, a very small one. It's not quite like Thorne and Thompson's. We also looked at analysis of student information, HR budget, payroll software costs. So there's a new software platform that Ms. Doherty is trying to propose that will replace a multitude of other ones. Overall, the thought would be maybe $55,000 savings for the district. We went through a little bit of what some of those abilities would be, linking the student portals to various different parts to our ledger and things like that. It's usually when you get one system, it's a little better than using multiple, and when you get these, that would actually be pretty good. Then we actually looked at the budget in terms of where we last left off with the public budget meetings. We had a significant gap. The administration went through items that they were going to present in follow-up budget meetings, various different items. And then the administration then brought up one of the other topics, which was the discontinuing of operations at Port Monmouth School and the reassignment of students, where the entire plan wasn't at that time the idea that the Port Monmouth School would be closed. They went through what the different savings would be. That's more of the finance type aspect of it. The other components of some of the more details about where the students would go, I think you saw some of the plans that the administration had pointed out. The administration pointed out that they considered other schools. There was no real detailed conversation on that. The committee consensus was referred to discuss with the full board. And not that it was part of the meeting, but I believe that night or the next morning, I believe Ms. Rogers notified the board that this had been brought up in a committee meeting. Before the meeting, Dr. George had called myself and Ms. Rogers let us know that the administration was going to add this. The agenda item was the budget in terms of the gap. The items were not specified in the agenda, so Dr. George did inform us. We said, presented at the committee. The board was notified shortly thereafter, and then there was a follow-up. I think one of the board members mentioned an executive session meeting to discuss more detailed plans, which were not reviewed. That was not reviewed by the budget committee. That's all I had. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Sorry, it was a lot of stuff.
Thanks. Anybody? Okay.
Just before we, Mrs. Rogers, before we move on, just to touch on the items that will be on for voting, just to clarify when we get to the voting part of the agenda, will be the change order that Mr. Little mentioned for Bay Shore and the heating units that need to be replaced there. We'll have our financial reports. We'll have the school bond ordinance, which is the ordinance that we've been talking about, would be the refinancing of, I believe, 2010 bonds, and we would be saving on the interest on those. So there's a resolution for that, and the projected savings is estimated to be $3.6 million over the remaining life of the bonds. So that would average about $450,000 a year. The exact savings won't be known until we sell the bonds, but this ordinance authorizes us to go forward with that transaction. But with the interest rates being as they are now, we will definitely realize the savings, and our financial advisor has advised us that this would be an estimate of the savings that we would be realizing. The rating call, the preparation of the refunding documents would take place in March. If this is approved, the pricing of the refunding will take place around April, with a closing in mid-May. And then we would, at that time, be able to realize what calculate what the actual savings would be going forward. But again, bonds cannot be sold unless a 3% net present value savings is realized, and we are on target to do that. So I just wanted to give some clarity to that. We also have an item on there for a cooperative pricing system that we have on there to make additional purchases through co-op. We have some transportation joiners on there, and we do have the proposal for the HR payroll and budget software that Mr. Little was talking about that we got proposals for, and we would like to approve that proposal from Genesis that we received going forward for that software. And that will realign with the savings of going forward just on this piece. About $21,000 a year or so, but we are also looking to do an RFP on the student information system software, which we will do in the next couple of months. And we're also looking to realize significant savings from that as well. And so all of these platforms combined will cost going forward considerably, from what we have now in place. So that's what we're looking at.
Thank you. Moving on to curriculum and instruction.
We're good now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. I wanted to give you an update on the elementary mathematics curriculum recommendation. As Mrs. Peake has brought up, we're at the end of our Go Math subscription at the end of the school year, requiring us to adopt a new program. As a pilot committee, we have teachers from every school who have been piloting various companies' products to see which is the best fit for our students. We started with 5 different programs and narrowed it down to 2. This year we have been piloting Investigations 3 and the Envision 2020 series, both of which are Pearson products. Our focus in piloting was to ensure that we would recommend a program that got students excited about math and afforded them with a developmentally appropriate conceptual understanding of mathematics, while also allowing us to achieve our district mission of personalized learning and allowing students and teachers to use research-based practices like number talks and estimatries and all the great things that our elementary math specialists do with our students. So to that end, after numerous meetings and discussions and really looking at the great things and the drawbacks about all the programs, we're recommending Investigations 3 for grades K and 1. We feel it is very developmentally appropriate for students. It's game-based in a sense, and the conversation that students have are just amazing. I've been doing iterator observations in these classrooms with principals, and the kids are just so excited. They're talking about math in ways that I would have never had expected. And it's interesting for me as a secondary person to see the concepts that are being exposed to at such a young age that they're understanding and that I see that they'll know later on. So I think it's a great move for our district to consider Investigations 3 for grades K and 1. For grades 2 and 5, we'd like to recommend Envisions 2020, while also affording teachers the opportunity to use investigations in those grades as well. There are great investigations units like for fractions and for multiplication that we're working on embedding into our curriculum. Since they're both Pearson products, teachers would still access both programs from the same interface, and so would students. Another major area was improved assessment features. Both platforms have very well-aligned assessment features to the state assessments, so I think that'll help with our assessment scores moving forward. There are a variety of parent resources available, and as a district, we're committed to having parent math nights and supporting parents and students through both of these curriculum adoptions. Other great features are listed on the sheet that has been shared, including solve and share, show me, convince me, just a lot of great opportunities for math dialogue and discussion in the classroom so that students will be afforded with a great mathematics education.
I have a question.
Sure.
The last math program that we had prior to this, I know it expired.
Go ahead.
How long would we have for?
6
5
years.
years?
6 years.
6 years. How long are we going to have this one for?
This is another 6-year subscription.
So I was listening and talking to teachers, not here in our district, just, we learn from different people. Is there a reason why you think for 6 years? Because somebody said something to me that made a lot of sense. They said, when you get a program, first year you're still playing with it, you're learning it. Second year you get a little bit better. By the third year you really go to implementing. Third, fourth, and then you're changing it again. Maybe you should go 8 years, 9 years. It's basic math.
Right. Well, the program helps us implement our curriculum. We teach standards, and we have we have our vision of instruction. The teachers have a setup that they use to teach math. The book and the program are just the program. We infuse our own strategies and our own, pedagogy.
I just don't want the life, whatever it is, to run out after 6 years. A little bit longer.
So the reason why the publishers do it in increments of usually 5 or 6 years is because most states, in fact pretty much all, do curriculum standard revisions on a very cyclical timeline, like every five years or so. So you don't want to over-purchase and extend your subscription and commit yourself to something that it has a possibility of eventually not supporting the standards if they change. And now you've over-committed to something, you've bought a subscription, and the resources are no longer supporting changed standards, and now you have to purchase other materials now to adjust to these new standards. So that's why the publishers nationwide, when they distribute these materials nationwide, typically stick to 5 to 6 year subscriptions for that reason. Again, that's the new market we're playing in with these publishers, as they've figured out how to increase their profits.
Does this clean up a lot of the other, there are, like you mentioned, a lot of tools that the kids use now, they use like Khan, they use like Dreambox. Will this be able to clean up some of that stuff and also maybe some of the difficulties that folks have with things like Go Math? Is this going to be an easier interface for parents and maybe, it seems like there's it has at least be like 6 or 7 different things I have to look at for math right now.
Yes, the program is very easy to use. It has a hard copy portion and an online portion with tons of support materials for parents and for students.
So I can run the math as well?
Yes. Yeah, and that was another thing teachers commented to in the pilot process, that they felt it was very user-friendly for both teachers and for students. And for parents. Thank you.
Thank you.
That will eventually be a voting agenda item because of the cost.
I'm sorry, what about this STEAM Zombie Apocalypse Summer Camp? Are you going to do, okay, go ahead.
Mrs. Caruso is now going to talk about, there was a question brought up, and the board members were speaking about, at our last meeting, about scholarships. So Mrs. Caruso, okay, we're going to do that one first. There we go.
I have 2 topics on the agenda. I'm just going to switch them for Mr. Curry's sake. He was very patient and sat here all night waiting for this part. Okay. The next topic on the agenda we're going to talk about is the middle school honor roll and high honor roll criteria recommendation. As you recall, we've been looking all year at revising the honor roll criteria for the middle schools. And Mr. Curry is going to explain to you how we got to that point of needing to do that, and I'll explain what it was.
Good evening. I just want to give everybody a little bit of a history in regards to how we got to this point with the new proposal. Over the last summer, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Scarano, and I reviewed and evaluated our middle school honor rolls criteria that we have for both high honor roll and regular honor roll. And we saw that there was a need based on some outdated pieces, and the handouts that I believe you guys have shows the current middle school criteria that we're currently using, and that there may be a need to update them. So with the leadership of Ms. Caruso, during the fall we met with the district assessment committee that consisted of guidance counselors, teachers at both high school and middle schools, and then also the administration of those places as well, because if we were going to first look at revising or updating the middle school, we certainly wanted to first look at, see if the high school wanted to do as well. Because one of the beliefs we had and philosophies going forward with this was to be more consistent with what the high school is doing rather than the point system that the current system we have here is with that. So the high school, between teachers, counselors, and administration agreed, did not need revision, so then we went forward on looking at the different types of possibilities. At that point, we went and did some research with some school districts throughout the area. As you can see on page 2, between Manasquan, Hazlet, Jackson, Rumson, Ocean, and Mattawan are some of the school districts we looked at and reached out to get their criteria with, while keeping in mind what we want to do and the standards that we want to set here in Middletown for our students with that. Keeping in mind that some of the standards you see with some of the other districts are very, we believe, rigid. With middle school, we want kids to be able to make mistakes. We want kids to be able to challenge themselves. So when you look at the new criteria, you'll see that there are pieces with that that allow that. That also consistent with the old one. The old criteria had a point system, which allows kids to accumulate points to do that. So if their grades ranged in different areas, they were still able to manage to be in a regular honor roll or a high honor roll with that. And then one of the last few points, we did want to eliminate the point system because it was difficult for students and also for us to calculate. Also, there was some updated pieces of our old criteria where they were referring to letter grades, which we no longer have. We go with the numerical system with that. And we also, again, like I said, allowed for an individual class to be lower than maybe the criteria for that. So that we allow students to challenge themselves, whether it be in an Algebra 1 class or an honors language arts class.
So therefore, the recommendation for the proposed change in the honor roll criteria is on the bottom of the front of your sheet.
All right, for high honor roll, the recommendation is that students will have 92% in all of their classes, or 92% in all but one of their classes, which can be as low as 85. All right, that's what Mr. Curry was alluding to a few minutes ago about middle schoolers. Sometimes, you know, they need a little bit of an advantage. Okay, and as far as high honor roll, regular honor roll, the regular honor roll will be marking period, every marking period is 80% in each class. And that's much simpler for people to understand. I can't tell you how many questions we had about the old criteria and how do you understand that, how do you calculate that, from parents who wanted to know how their children were doing. This is a much simpler honor roll and much more in keeping with the other people we've spoken to. And we spent a little here. The most important thing to understand is we didn't just pick these out of thin air. We came out with our first proposal. We went to Mrs. Calabro. We went to Mrs. Calabro early in the year with our first proposal. We actually ran the data using last year's students to see how that would affect what the implementation of the new honor roll, what kind of effect it would have on our students, and how many would make the honor roll successful. We tweaked that one, we tweaked it again, we tweaked it again, we kept rerunning until we finally, just last week, said, I think we've done it. So this is the proposal that we would like to move forward as far as the new honor rolls for next year. Any questions?
This is an alignment to make it more consistent with the grading system, to make it easier to understand or harder to achieve.
Oh, no, not harder to achieve. Now,
It's easier
but
to
we did
understand.
balance the honor rolls a little bit better because, I'll be very honest, there were many more students on high honor roll than honor roll in our district based on the old criteria. That's not, if you talk to any other district, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Yeah, it's an inverse relationship, yes. Okay, the high honor roll normally has less students on it than the honor roll. So this does better balance the honor rolls. It doesn't kick kids off the honor rolls, but it balances them better.
All right, I just want to make sure, I'm assuming that this kind of program is used to sort of encourage kids to do better, right? Like, middle school, honor roll, high honor roll is great, parents are happy, kids happy, right? So it's not to make it like something where it's put more stress on 6th, 7th, 8th graders.
And students will understand what it takes to be on the honor roll, which they really didn't before. You know, so they have a goal they can, they can strive for.
Appreciate that. 280.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Curry. Okay, the other topic, this will be brief, is I'm sure you recall that a couple of months ago, we had a question at one of the board meetings from a member of the community about scholarships in Middletown. And it was a legitimate concern that the central office felt. So based on that concern and the question that was asked, I did some research because, to be perfectly honest, the operations part of scholarships in our high schools is something that I was not well versed on. So I learned a lot about it in the past couple of months. And I'm happy to report that although it is true that the top 15% of the students are the ones that are interviewed for scholarships for 4 days each year by the interview committees, I'm happy to report that that does not mean that the scholarships are only given to the top 15% of our students. That's just the number of students that are interviewed. The truth is that of approximately 332 awards that we gave out last year at graduation, to the graduating seniors, 114 of the 332 had that top 15% requirement, while 218 did not have that requirement. Also, in terms of money, we awarded $167,450 in scholarships for the 2 awards nights at the 2 high schools. 46% of those funds had that top 15% requirement, where 54% of those funds were awarded to students without that requirement being in place. So if anybody wants further details on how I gathered these figures and how I determined this, I'd be happy to talk. I wanted to share with you that that concern that was brought up was legitimate and we were able to clear it up and say that a lot of our students who are not in the top 15% do receive a substantial amount of scholarship money.
How would you have to make it so that they know they can apply? Because in the past, they were told only the top 15% could apply.
I actually have emails and letters from the guidance counselors to the students telling us that, you're talking about different things. There's an application that the top 15% must fill out to be interviewed. For the interview people, the top 15%, the ones that do require. But there is all these other scholarships that the students are told do not require that. Please apply for those too, and those were also awarded at graduation. So it is a much broader award than it sounded like at first.
I think that communication hasn't been clear because we're hearing from the parents and from the kids. So
and I can convey that. I can convey that.
There's emails, there's got to be a way to make it more clearer for them so that they start applying. People start applying.
Okay. All right, but I can convey that. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, so Mrs. Orozco is here. You have the flyer. It's an initial flyer. It's still kind of in some initial stages. We're working with the graphic design students about a new initiative, that opportunity that we're offering for pretty much middle school age students the end of June.
Good evening. As I'm sure you're well aware, one of our district goals was to explore the establishment of a STEAM camp for our students this summer. So this is what we have been working on, and in addition to lots of other initiatives. But so what we have done is we have done some research with our students, with our parents, from our teachers, and in the local community to try to figure out how can we best offer this opportunity to our students. So what we're seeking approval for is a STEAM camp to be hosted at High School South at the very end of the school year, so the first week of summer vacation. And the focus would be for students in grades 5 through 8 currently, that they would be able to work with one another, that it would be some sort of a collaborative and integrated program that will allow access to our top high school students who are interested in the same fields, to our teacher experts, and where our students could really just have an opportunity to engage with the areas of STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So they would have the opportunity to specialize in an area for the morning, and then work with all of their peers on a greater theme of what we are proposing is how to solve the zombie apocalypse, or how to survive the zombie apocalypse. So we thought to give them something a little bit relevant for them to work on. At least interesting. Maybe not relevant, but if you read current young adult fiction, it is relevant. So what I do want to point your attention to is the fact that it is not in the district budget. So this is an opportunity that we would need to raise funds for. So there is a cost associated that we're proposing for this camp. That would be approximately $125 per student. That would need to be paid by the family, because like I said, it has not been involved in or included in any sort of a district budget. That dollar amount we found that by doing, again, some research. We met with Denise DeRosa for a little while. We actually met with the Middletown Parks and Rec to see what they charge for their camps. And this is simply based on what it would cost to pay our teachers and provide supplies. It is not a revenue stream at all. It's simply to cover costs of the program.
How do you deal with hardship?
This is as someone mentioned before, a pay to participate endeavor at this point because it was not budgeted. Yeah.
I think this is a fantastic opportunity though, because there are STEAM camps at Monmouth County Park System. I signed my son up for this summer and there weren't enough kids so he didn't get to go to the camp this summer. And the other camps are much more expensive. They're extremely expensive for a family to afford. So this is an affordable. Thank you for bringing this to us.
We're hoping that we get enough students that we can run it. I will say that there is a minimum number of students that we would need to make it worth the cost. But I agree, we have found comparable programs in our area ranging from $150 to $420 for the same time frame. So we feel like we would at least be price competitive.
And just to ask, it says that you did send out an interest survey to parents and students. Did the interest survey support the minimum of 56 students?
Yes.
Okay.
Overwhelmingly so.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Any questions on voting item agendas? Agenda voting items, I should say.
I just want to give the board just a very brief update of where we are in the before and after care RFP. We met last night and we reviewed the applications. We came up with some top candidates and we will be interviewing them on March 10th.
Okay, moving on to shared services.
So So we met, we actually have a shared purpose next week, right? Yeah, our last meeting was in January. Right.
To confirm when the next meeting would be, because we were going to, we actually were supposed to meet this week, and we did not do that because we had the Consolidation meeting.
So at our last shared services meeting, there were no items for the board to consider for action. We did get an update from the township on the parking situation here at Tyndall, as well as Normandy Park. They also talked to us about their investment in the field at Nutswamp, and talked about the application process for that field. I don't think there is anything else, again, actionable that we discussed. Dr. George?
Yeah, what I would say earlier in the week, Mr. Don there with Mayor Perry and with the fire chiefs to discuss a program while you're in high school to get certified or go through the certification process for firefighters. So Ms. Pekas, myself, I know that Ms. Caruso was there. Yeah, we had representatives, administrative representatives from both high schools. It was a very productive meeting. We're excited about the potential. There are a few things that still need to be figured out as it relates to age, because actually to participate in the program, fire program for the state, you have to be 18, which is different than police. As you know, that we have a partnership with Keensburg for a program where you can actually start in a program when you're 17. So there's some age restrictions that need to be worked out. Both Mayor Perry and the fire chiefs, and then we do have a fire academy here in Middletown. So we're working to try to for two reasons. One, to get student or young adults, students graduating from high school interested in participating in the volunteer fire companies, and we are the largest in the world volunteer fire company. But the second thing is for them to really have this, for the opportunity to explore as a vocation and a career moving forward. So we have some visual outcomes on our side. There's some things they're going to be doing on their side. But it was a very productive 1-hour meeting. We're excited about the potential.
The other thing we talked about at the January meeting that I'll report out on is, we had talked about whether there was any update on the work that was going to be done over at Normandy Park and the timing of that. And they have not established the timing of that at this point. They haven't put it out to bid. They were still waiting for some permits that they needed. But we discussed the fact that obviously we have to take the operations of Nutswamp School into account when that project is being planned for construction. They understand that and will be proactive in coordinating the work so that there would be not an impact on the operations of Nutswamp School. And when they get more of a timeline, they will let us know, and we'll probably be part of the process of helping establish that timeline for that property.
I believe the last item we discussed with them was just asking for an update of their conversations with the Navy around the use of Normandy Road and the timing of the lights, the traffic turning into School South, on Nutswamp, as well as all the other, just again, because we have vehicles that are traversable, especially getting backed up. So, okay. Thanks.
Okay, that's it for the committee reports. At this time, I'd like to open the public to agenda items only, the public mic, for a 30-minute limit, 3 minutes each.
I just have a few more little questions. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about the possible closure of Fort Monmouth School.
I have a third grader in Port Monmouth, and I have a future kindergartner that would hopefully be going there as well. I just had a few questions. I know I'm probably not going to get answers back, but why is the supposed updated demographic study not available? Why is it only 2017 that we have available for us, if one was supposedly done? And also, where are the results from the recent traffic study that obviously had to be done? When was it completed, and what was the duration of the study? And if it wasn't completed, that is something that has to necessarily be done before you can vote on it. Because there's no guarantee that the safety of my child and all the Port Monmouth children, you can't guarantee that. And this last question is specifically for the board. I'm asking you if you have seen the breakdown of updated estimates that results in the now $3.9 million that needs to be spent in Port Monmouth. That went from 3.7 to 3.8 to now 3.9. Have you seen that breakdown? Not just told what needs to be done, but have you seen the breakdown of recent estimates that came up with this figure that keeps changing? And lastly, this is just my own personal opinion, I honestly find it appalling that our Board of Ed president sat up there smirking, whispering, smiling, while the people from this community were pouring their hearts out about possibly closing their community school. And you can't say you weren't. We've all been sitting here watching. That was disrespectful. You were supposed to be, we voted you in. You were supposed to be here representing us, the public. That was disgusting, honestly. Thank you.
Yeah, that's working, okay. My name's Rachel Konopka. I have 3 girls, 2 at Thompson, 1 at Nutswamp. And I wanted to just comment on the consolidation plan, but with a step back. I've been coming to Board of Ed meetings for the past few years. I've come to every strategic planning forum meeting, and I feel like I have an appreciation for the pickle that we are in as a district. In light of lowering enrollment for now and the aging of our schools and the number of buildings we have, I do appreciate that we have a situation that needs to be addressed. That said, I feel like making this immediate change this year so quickly, outside of the bigger strategic planning action plan, is a mistake. We can figure out a way, I think, as an entire district of our 17 schools to keep Port Monmouth open until the strategic plan is finalized, and we know that there are more changes coming. I think I can appreciate that there are changes that need to happen, and that closing Port Monmouth at the end of this school year will not fix everything. It's not a silver bullet. There's going to be more changes. I think we all know that. We should delay any decision, any actual action until we can do it all together. I don't think it's fair to have one school have to shoulder this right now. We are one Middletown, and if we're going to work together as a district and be one community, we should all shoulder the changes at once, after the entire plan's been put forth. I also am a little confused as to what it actually would take money-wise to keep Port Monmouth open just for 1 year. I recognize that there was a $2.6 million gap in the budget. It seemed like with some other changes that were proposed, we could narrow that to 1.5. So we're looking at 1.5 we have to make up for next year. But the cost to keep Port Monmouth open, as I understand it from reading some of the strategic planning documents, like Pam had said earlier, is $186,000 across 17 schools with an overall budget of $170 million. I think we can find that money to let these kids stay in the school one more year. Again, I know it does not mean that changes might not happen later. And I think all of us expect changes to happen later. But all of our kids, as a community of 10,000 students, should endure those changes together as a community. And I have to imagine it would be more efficient to manage that change all at once as opposed to spread out over 2 or more years. Thank you.
Clarify that, everybody keeps referencing this $186,000. The cost that we're estimating that we would be able to save in the budget without operating per month for next year is $1.2 million. There is a personnel component to it. We are not anticipating having to do layoffs, but through attrition and people leaving and retiring and so forth, and positions not being refilled, those positions would be absorbed into our staff. But we would be eliminating positions. We just would not be looking to impact people who are not already leaving the district. So the savings is $1.2 million. It's not $186,000. I just want to clarify that.
Understood. No, I do understand what you mean. So no staff would be effectively laid off because of the consolidation.
Well, that is our intent, and we feel confident that we will be substantially able to do that. We can't promise every single position at this point, but we do know that there are constantly people leaving and retiring and so forth, and we just would not replace those positions so that the positions or the staff at Port Monmouth would take those positions.
What's that? It's other.
Right, look, the teaching positions are going to be repurposed, in other schools in the district, but there are other positions at the school that we are anticipating, those would be eliminated.
No, I understand. When I think about the size of our district, and that is, a pro and a con, I think we can all tighten our belts across the 16 other schools, one little notch to let Port Monmouth stay open.
Hi, Vera Paseki, Middletown. I have one child in Thompson, one in South, one who graduated from South last year. I guess I'm just going to go back a little bit. 8 or 9 years ago, I was involved, with a group that tried to sound the alarm because my son's class, who's now sophomore in high school, had an alarmingly large group, and it seemed to be a perfect storm because that same year, River Plaza, Lincroft, all seemed to have big class sizes. So 5 years ago, although we tried to move things along, 5 years ago, the largest class ever entered into Thompson with 1,100 kids, almost 1,100. We were concerned about having enough lockers. They had to open Cafe B to have an ancillary cafeteria. He lived through it. The administrators, handled it the best they could. The last redistricting proposal was disappointing. I had hoped we could have worked with a proposal instead of having it completely thrown out, but as it stood, I could not have voted for that either. His class entered South with Bayshore, probably again one of the largest classes that enter South. My daughter, who was a senior at that time, struggled. She couldn't get back to her locker, so she carried her bag on her back all day because she couldn't manage to get back to her locker between classes. My son, who was used to crowded hallways at schools, he did okay. So given the discussion with strategic planning that talked about 2 years to resolve this or look at this, I lost hope that he'd be helped. Next year he'll be a junior, maybe it'll be fixed when he's a senior, he's gone. So now I hope that my 6th grader in Thompson will have it addressed. I think the problem we keep falling into is we keep talking interchangeably between funding, budget, S2, and strategic planning. So although this is a budget S2 issue, we then refer to our strategic planning as a reason for doing this. And I'm just concerned because we had a strategic plan 5 years ago that laid out a very specific action plan on kind of how to address the inequities. Nothing came of that, but I just want to put out some concerns I have. The decision that is being made for the closure of Port Monmouth, and I don't know if that is ultimately the right decision or another. It's creating another weird pocket of zoning that leads me to believe that when you do redistricting, somewhere down the line, those kids are going to get moved again. And that really bothers me because I've gone through a lot of years here where special needs classes and children have been moved to make room for kids, and it is not a pleasant thing for anybody. The other concern that I want to put out there is that it does limit. 5 years ago, the strategic plan discussion was that we would start at ground zero and we would look at all the special education classrooms that have been pushed to the less populated areas of this district and see where, obviously not every school can have a multiply disabled classroom, but maybe it would make sense to have them more centralized or put within their communities instead of pushed out to the less crowded schools. This closure, I worry, will limit logical placement of special ed classes. We're still talking about kind of putting them where they fit versus where they're actually needed or where they could do the most good or where they could be closest to their current community. So again, I don't, and the other thing that I would like to say is that if I were a poor mom and parent, and this decision were being made, I would prefer to be zoned to the school that I was closest to versus moving to an almost, nobody is going to have a kindergartner walk 1.8 miles to school. So if I lived across the street from people that were Zone Harmony, I would rather go there, same as Ocean. So I would just encourage people to look at this and again, take it into New Monmouth as a unique, wonderful community. My daughter has been there as well. It's our only school with an elevator. It does have existing great sensory rooms and things like that that were designed for a special ed population, and it's a central location. And so I worry that we lose the ability to move some of these classrooms logically. And I don't think redistricting would take that long if we really put our heads down and worked on it. Thank you.
Rational as that the way you just did. I'm going to put my hat back on, not out of disrespect, because this is what it looks like. So I apologize. I have 2 kids, and neither one of them go to.
I'm sorry. Could you just please state your name
I'm
for
sorry.
us so we have that? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My name is John McGrath. I have 2 grammar school age children, and neither one of them go to the affected schools that we're talking about. So I'm one of the lucky ones. You guys are all bad mouthing a couple meetings ago. My kids go to Village, they're gonna go to Village, I can throw a rock at Village. So, they also, my parents are divorced, so I bounced around as a kid. I went to 3 different 4th grade schools. So I went to 7 grammar schools, and I moved to Monmouth County, and I went to another 3 grammar schools. Because we had a term that I just learned a couple meetings ago called banding. We didn't know what that was. We just knew we went to school in 6th grade, and 7th and 8th grade someplace else, and then we went to the high school. Not only was I banded to 7th and 8th, we were then redistricted on top of that. So I have no connection to my grammar school. It could fall down and burn tomorrow. I wouldn't care about any of the 7. But these people have connections to their grammar schools that I can't grasp. I don't have that connection, but they do. The people in Middletown, it's a bunch, we're not one town. We're one township with a ton of little communities. And the people in this town, I didn't grow up here, I've been here I moved here, I closed on I sold my house the day before Sandy. So we moved in and that was our welcome to Middletown. But like a lot of people here, I have a Sandy-related story. I don't have the connection, but I have a connection to my neighbors, and my neighbors have a connection to this community. And everybody, no matter if it's what we consider a succeeding grammar school or a failing grammar school, it doesn't matter to the people who live there. They connect with that school. It doesn't matter what the state says about it. It's their community, it's their school. And like I said, I don't grasp that, but I do see the this is a township of multiple communities where these people love where they're from. Wet side, dry side, rich sides, it's a community, the neighbors and the school that you go to, these people relate to that I cannot. And I know that you've all had a very long day. Like I said, I don't even have a kid in this anymore, and I'm still here. The behavior of some of the people up here was abhorrent during the meeting. And to call the letters that were written by the students cute, I don't think that was, I don't think that was the intent of the letters. I don't think they were trying to be cute. I think they were trying to show heart. I haven't read the letters, and maybe some of them are cute. But I can tell you as an audience that was a minute to take a guess. And I know some of you have the students' best interest, and I know some of you have the taxpayers' best interest. And I know there's probably an overflow between them. And even the people up here that I don't agree with, some of you I've gained more respect for than I could have imagined. Now, I don't have to agree with everything you said, but some people I believe are in it for whatever their reason is, it's their reason, and they're going to stick to their gun. And whoever, Ms. Mies, whoever called you a wimp, I don't think has ever heard you speak. I know there was a comment made about being rushed and the budget coming up, and this is all, everyone was taken by surprise over. I don't believe for a minute that this is a new plan or the idea to close Fort Monmouth is something that's just come up recently. It doesn't work like that. Whoever idea this was, it's been there for a while. So maybe now the facts are coming out, or now we're bringing it to the public, but this is not a spur of the moment, epiphany in the middle of the night type thing. The public trust thing for your referendum or closing schools or not closing schools, I understand if the budget, everybody has to work inside of it. But the public trust is fractured, and the reason it's fractured is because of the rumors, and I don't know where they were started, but we know how the weight of the redistricting, the banding, had everyone in the township frothing at the mouth. So I don't really think that was ever really an idea of anyone up here, but the public, it became the parents of the students against all of you. So whatever your feeling was on it, it was a lynch mob coming from you all. So until the public can think that this wasn't a bait and switch, which would have been genius if that's what you were going to do, is put the worst case scenario out there and then work back to something that seems reasonable. So that's what I think everybody thought. That's what I think everybody in this room who still doesn't want this to happen thinks. The other issue is it becomes the residents against the incoming residents. The developments are being built. And that may not have anything to do with anything, but that's the trust issue. So the trust is they don't trust all of you as a whole, and they don't trust the township's motives, and they think their children are going to be displaced for these new developments. See, new people coming in who are strangers that they don't know, who are going to use up their resources. They think that their children are going to have to go to a school that they don't know, with teachers they don't know, and the whole scenario that we've just heard to accommodate the new developments company. That may or may not be true, but that's what the thought is. I didn't grow up in Middletown.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time is long since you started.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I didn't grow up in Middletown. I grew up all over New Jersey. I lived in Monmouth County for the last 15 years of my life. My wife lived in Middletown. We moved to Middletown solely for quality of life. Our parents lived here. She wanted to live in the town. And I love the quality of life I have in Middletown. I love it. I love how it's a great big town that feels like a small town. I love the services, I love the people, but little by little, I've been here for 10 years now, it's going away. Part of that is progress. Part of that is that's what's going to happen. But part of that is, I think, the things that made this town kind of special to the people who grew up here are slowly but surely slipping away. So I appreciate the job all of you have to do, some more than others, and once again, whether I agree with you or not, I'm impressed with how some of you have conducted yourselves. Good luck with this.
Counselor, I'm going to make your night. I'm going to keep it under 2. I spoke after Aaron Henry at the
I'm
last
sorry, could you
meeting.
just state your name for the record, please?
Sure, Mark Ebro Progesh. I have twins in Port Monmouth, they're in kindergarten, and my wife and I have a son who graduated South last year. So I spoke after Aaron Henry at the first meeting, and now I spoke after that gentleman, who I couldn't disagree with more. Sir, you were very eloquent. Better heads than mine have handled the facts of this case. I also, like him, grew up all over the place. I was a Navy vet. I went all over the world. My wife, born and raised Port Monmouth. Her parents went to Port Monmouth School. My brother-in-law went to Port Monmouth. My kids now go to Port Monmouth. I bought a house in Port Monmouth because I wanted for my children what I didn't have. The same school, all 5 grades. So to the Board of Ed, I implore you, remember why you're there. Remember why you chose to serve. And do the right thing, March 11th.
Okay, seeing nobody else come to the mic, I need a motion to approve number 10, Proclamation EA's Read Across America Proclamation. I need a second, please. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? I need a motion to approve the minutes of executive session on January 22nd, 2020, the regular voting meeting on January 22nd, 2020, executive session 2/5/2020, voting meeting 2/5/2020, and executive session 2/12/2020. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I'm going to skip past the report of the president on to B, report of the business administrator board secretary. I need a motion to approve B 1 through 4.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
I'm opposed to number 3.
Okay. Abstentions? Okay. Okay. I need a motion to approve C 1 through 3.
So moved.
I need a second, please.
Second.
Discussion.
Legally, be careful how I say this, but I have a problem went under. I just have to say that I think negotiate fairly, we negotiate fair contracts, and I have a problem with days that are not in the contracts being given off with pay. Our taxpayers have to take vacation time when school is closed, and I think that's perfect time for our staff to be able to take vacations if they need it. I don't think we should have to pay extra days when we're in a budget crunch.
If I may, Madam President and Dr. George and Mrs. Menuez, I did, you referenced, you brought the issue to individual's attention, it was to the board, to the administration, and myself as legal counsel. I did, it was probably in January of this year, when it last came up, and I know it was before that as well. But I did review, my office did review all of the collective bargaining agreements in the district. I do have a memo from February 5th, 2020. I apologize, it was not sent to the administration before this evening because I did not realize this was on the agenda this evening. But I can review for you in public essentially the operative language of all the collective bargaining agreements, and I think I
might be able to, I guess, identify with it. I'll use the word confusion for lack of a better one, may come in. So before you this evening is a proposed 12-month calendar referencing holidays. Right? And so on the one hand, a holiday can be defined as, Christmas Day, let's say, or Veterans Day. On the other hand, a holiday can be as reflected on the calendar at certain periods of time, i.e. winter recess is under the banner of holiday. And so when you look at the operative language in the custodian and maintenance contract, the paraprofessionals contract, I think they're part of the MTEA, the MTAA contract administrators, as well as the non-bargaining individual employment contracts. They all have similar, but yet somewhat different language. So for the custodians and maintenance, this is where it might be a bit of an issue. Under Article 9, holidays, and again, before you this evening is a calendar that says holiday on it from July to May. For holidays, for custodians and maintenance, they are guaranteed 14 paid holidays. So custodians and maintenance are guaranteed 14 paid holidays. It doesn't say they can't be granted by recommendation of the administration to approve a board more than 14 paid holidays. So by approving this, now I would note also, I don't know why, but it looks like custodian and maintenance are not part of this proposed calendar. But if they were, it would be legally and ethically and procedurally appropriate for this board to grant more, as long as you don't grant less. If you did approve this calendar with less than 14, you would then be contractually obligated to make up the difference somewhere. And then it also goes on to state that in addition to the 14 paid holidays guaranteed, holidays to be listed on, quote, board's calendar of holidays, unquote, which is again before you this evening, with consultation with the union. And if a holiday falls on a Saturday, they get it on a Monday. It's also my understanding that the administration has consulted with the unions with respect to this calendar. Paraprofessionals, I don't believe they get paid vacation, so that's not, and they're not 12-month employees rather, so that's not relevant here. MTAA, Administrators Association, Article 17 of their contract states that, and I'm paraphrasing, but 12-month employees work 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, with the, quote, exception of holidays established by the board and other contractual leave time, unquote. So again, the holidays that's before you tonight are those being established by the board, and so they would, by virtue of the language in their contract, be entitled to these days off that are in this calendar, which I understand is consistent with prior years' proposed calendars. In fact, it has less vacation days or holiday days, I should say. Under Article MTE, the Education Association contract. And again, all these contracts have other days off as well, sick, personal, etc. But here we're talking about holidays. Under the MTEA contract, Article 12A, you have a provision for secretaries. Secretaries shall observe a working calendar, 12 months/10 months, as approved by the board. So again, every holiday on here and or grouping of days, banding of days, stringing together of days would count as holidays for secretaries. Teachers are all 10-month employees, so they work a 10-month calendar, not relevant here. Again, you have superintendent, assistant superintendent, all the individual employment contracts have similar language with respect to holidays as set forth in the district's 12-month calendar adopted annually. So I think the question is a fair question, but in looking at the individual contracts as well as the collectively bargained contracts, there's nothing before you this evening as granting anyone more days than have been contractually bargained for. Thank you.
Are you saying that this calendar does not afford more days than what the contracts say? That's not what you advise me to fill out.
Well, what I advise you would be under attorney-client privilege, so I would advise you not to disclose, but I advise you from an attorney-client privilege standpoint. But what I said was that I agree with the concept and the premise that employees who are subject to a collectively bargained contract should only be afforded the days off that are reflected in that contract. And so to the extent that there is or was and we were very careful to avoid the word practice, because we know that means in the educational public employment context, but to the extent there was a practice that was asserted, however not proven, but to the extent there was a perceived practice that gave people more days off than in the contract, yes, I agree, you should follow the contract. The same way people want to get paid X dollars per week pursuant to the contract, they should work the days in the contract. So I agree with the premise, but the premise wasn't supported by the facts. The facts was reflected in my analysis of the individual contracts. That's why I said it was a fair question based upon a perception that there may have been more time about it than less. The only bargaining unit that appears to be getting more time off, and I say appears, is the maintenance group, because it says they are only entitled to, I think it was 14 days, I said, let me make sure I'm right. No, I'm saying to the extent that there's a perception that people are getting more time off than the contract requires or was bargained for, you're right, is custodians and maintenance. If they were on this list, custodian and maintenance are entitled to 14 paid holidays. So if they were on this sheet tonight, you'd be approving more time off than the contract requires. However, even if you did that, it would not be illegal, unethical, or inappropriate, because that only sets the basement, the floor, versus there's no prohibition of getting more days off. That's all, man.
Everyone else.
Before I forget what I have to say, because I'm going to forget, I don't know if I can say this or not, but I'm going to say this correctly, so I don't. We had specialists come in to sit down and show us where we had weights. And he analyzed it and said, if too many days off, they can't possibly use all their vacation time because they get too many days off. That was a specialist that the superintendent brought into us. I answered. I listened to what he said. So he told us that they should take their plenty of vacation days. Don't give us freebies.
I don't know the context in which this specialist said that. I don't know the time frame when he or she may have said it. I don't know if it was in reference to one particular union and or the 5 other references either. I don't know if it was reference to the non-bargaining personnel or just the bargaining or any particular category of employees. I also don't know if that was in connection with collective bargaining preparation or union negotiations, et cetera, and if it was, it may not be appropriate to discuss that in public. But what I will say, though, is that to the extent any board member disagrees with the 12-month holiday schedule, vote no.
That analysis that you're referring to is not on the 12-month calendar for the bargaining unit that we're voting on tonight. The bargaining and non-bargaining contracts that calendar that we're voting on tonight, and that is MTEA, which we met with, MTAA, which we met with, and non-bargaining. That would be 3 less holidays than they had in the previous years. The teams, the contract that you're talking about, although we did meet with their union representative, we were not able to meet that only the local in-district representative will be able to meet with. So we postponed that calendar till we have an opportunity to meet with them.
He's told us that. I didn't make this up.
I did not say that. I did not say that. I did not say that. I did not say that.
Good question. Who on the board sat there when this 12-month calendar was made? We're on the calendar committee, and we have a say with the calendar. So, just answer now, who made the 12-month calendar?
We discussed it in closed session last meeting, and I was given direction by the board at that time to meet with each of the bargaining units and talk about the potential of less vacation days. And I had that discussion with with all the bargaining units, and I brought the calendar in front of the board based on the input I got from the board in the closed session discussion.
You made the calendar for the 12-month employees.
So I guess from a governance standpoint, from a code of ethics standpoint, NJSA 18812-24.1, there were some references to that this evening. Board members are aware that the superintendent runs the day-to-day operations of the school district, makes recommendations to the board. And so to the extent there are committees of the board, the committees are not charged with making anything other than a decision based upon a recommendation of the superintendent. If a majority of the board members present and voting this evening feel as though that the committee structure wasn't followed, then again, they can vote no this evening. However, just like many items on the agenda, you can vote for an item that is prepared by the administration in furtherance of their contractual responsibilities, namely preparing a calendar, which, as I've indicated from a legal standpoint, is compliant with the contract in the district.
Okay, so I'm just going to say one more thing. We're sitting here in a budget crisis. I think it's time for the board to stop being so nice and to do the right thing. I know we're not paid by what we're doing, but I think we can follow contracts.
Okay. So roll call vote. For C 1 through 3, roll call vote, C 1 through 3.
Mrs. Caminiti?
Yes to everything but no to 3.
Mr. DeFranco?
Yes.
Mr. Dymo?
Yes.
Mr. Little?
Yes.
Mrs. Minuis?
No on bullying and no on.
Could you please, which item are you no on? No, number?
Bullying and harassment, and no on number 3, which is the 12-month calendar.
Thank you. Mrs. Wright?
Yes.
Mrs. Rogers?
Yes. Okay, moving on to, I need a motion for B1 through 4. Oh, from B1 through 4, please.
Yes. So moved.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? I need a motion for C1. A motion to approve C1, please. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? I need a motion to approve E1 through
1 through 4.
What was that?
Where's 4?
E1 through 4. I don't see 4. On the agenda. 1 through 3 and 4 on the agenda, please. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Abstention. I need a motion to approve F1,
1 through 6, including the addendum.
1 through 6, including the addendum. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions. I need an approval for G1, please. I'm sorry, a motion for G1, please. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions.
Mrs. Rogers, before you do personnel, I just want to update the board as we discussed that number 2, letter I, the effective date should be June 30th, 2020.
personnel.
Number 2, letter I, the effective date of that resignation is June 30th, 2020, instead of January 24th, 2020.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the personnel report on the agenda. So that's 1.
It's 1 through 16, but there's items for some of those numbers on the addendum.
So 1 through 16. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to old business.
To say this earlier. I know that emotion, people seem like they're coming across, well, maybe some people think they are coming across loud and unruly. In their position, and I don't care what school you're going to get emotion.
Anybody else? And moving on to new business.
I have been appointed to a state committee on career readiness, and I attended this meeting, and I would like to have Dr. George put together a meeting, and I can explain all of this to him. There are opportunities for us to get our kids educational career readiness from our school. Job Corps, there's New Jersey School Board put this on, the State Department of Education, but they're also. They were talking, they brought in union leaders from different trades, and the thing is that unions are older and they're looking for younger people to come in because they're phasing out. They're paying these kids $30, $40, $50 an hour. And we don't know all the logistics, but Job Corps offers free training to our students. Now, I don't know the logistics of how we get them there or if we bring Job Corps here, but they also use different unions that we can get to in because they do on-the-job trainings or do training sessions to prepare our kids to be electricians, plumbers, all the trades that are out there. So if there's a way that we could get more information on this and there's no cost to us, we could actually start this kind of like what you're talking about, the Fire Academy. There's more trades brought into our students that are not college bound and maybe even those that are college bound that want to learn the trade. So I would hope that our district would take advantage. The board members were there, kids go back to their schools and present it. Like I said, the commissioner of the DOE was there and representative, and she spoke. There's supposedly New Jersey School Boards has a PowerPoint, so I hope we can set up a meeting and start looking into this because this is the goal of the state now. We're readiness back to our students. And I think that some members of the board have expressed concerns about doing this too. So I have a packet of information, but I really hope we can have a meeting with these people and find out their ideas and how we can get them in or get our kids to be trained for.
I would, from that opportunity, thank you. As I've reported out Friday, we've met with the local 825 heavy equipment operators. We've formed a relationship with Brookdale, which is also looking into these other additional career readiness paths. I would welcome any information you could give me, and we would move forward with meeting with those people. Thank you.
Well, that was the other thing they're encouraging us to try to look up at the community colleges to also have these courses presented or maybe put on there. So it's a big initiative.
Yes, we have bi-monthly meetings with Dr. Stout focused on this topic exactly, and his team.
Okay, you.
When you turn on the TV these days lately, everybody's talking about this wonderful virus that's out there.
And I just want to know if we have to shut down our schools, or as they said, that the state comes in and is telling people, as far as they're talking about large meetings and gatherings and stuff, and they had to shut down the schools. Do we have a plan in place on the children as far as education still going on? This could be for some time they're talking about it. It's been on the news. They said it in New York and stuff. So if it's something that maybe they're going to close the schools on us, what will our plan of action be? Do we have any idea? For our kids, like me. What happens?
We have a plan that's in place. The coronavirus is not a plan to shut down schools. I think that's what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they're talking
We
about.
have
They're saying
updated
that-
information on the website. Following the CDC and the Department of Ed, we have updated information on the website.
Yeah, but right now, the state doesn't allow us to conduct school when students aren't in school. If the school is
Right.
closed, just like Sandy, we couldn't have done, we actually thought about that, online, and that's not.
So what happens if, God forbid, we had to close for a month or 6
I'm
weeks?
sorry,
I said, what happens if we had to close, if the state said you had to close for a month or 6 weeks? We can't go past
We'd
a
have to
certain
alter
date.
the calendar, unless the state said that we could do something different, but right, the way it stands right now, we would have to alter the calendar. We had to alter the calendar for Sandy, we were closed for, I think, almost 2 weeks with Sandy. So, yeah, the government would have to make that call.
Okay, I just want to know.
Okay, if there's no more new business, I'd like to open the mic to public comment. Seeing nobody come to the mic, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. I need a second, please.
Second.